Chapter 2586. Diamo Xian chuckled. His chest rose and fell, shaking her face. The next moment, the man's slender fingers gently caressed her cheek. 5 fingers slightly closed. She lifted her blushing face slightly. For eyes met. Under the deep gaze of those shimmering peach blossom eyes, Yiqing Luo suddenly felt her face heating up. Damn it. Was it because she hadn't seen Xian for a long time? It was just a casual glance. It was enough to flirt with her so much. Yiqing Luo expressed that as the queen, she must not be afraid at this moment. She raised her hands and was about to hug Diamo Xian's neck to launch a counterattack. Her hands were held firmly in Diamo Xian's palms. Yiqing Luo couldn't struggle and simply fell into his arms, lifting her eyelids to glare at him. He was slightly startled by what he saw. Diamo Xian's eyes were filled with complex emotions that she couldn't understand. His brows were filled with a smile, but it wasn't a deep smile. Xian, why? She hadn't finished her question. But her lips were gently pressed by the man's slender fingers. When I wasn't around, how many rotten peach blossoms did you attract? His eyes flickered, his dark red thin lips raised into an extremely shallow arc. But Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the jealousy under Diamo Xian's smile. Her man could really knock over the vinegar jar anytime and anywhere. If you can't explain clearly, I'll deal with you ruthlessly. Diamo Xian got close to her face, the arc on his lips added a hint of evil. Yiqing Luo? Was he looking for an excuse to do something improper to her? But looking at Diamo Xian's serious expression, Yiqing Luo still explained obediently, Yin Yanxiu only saw Gui Wu's invitation, and Gui Wu and I were in the same carriage, so when he picked Gui Wu up, he also picked me up. Diamo Xian raised his brows. That's it? What else can there be? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips, looking at Diamo Xian's disbelieving expression. She frowned slightly. That's it? Diamo Xian inched closer, until her pupils were filled with his handsome and elegant face, before he finally stopped. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with the man's incomparably handsome face. That pair of obsidian-like peach blossom eyes gleamed, causing her heart to beat wildly. You. What else do you want? Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned slightly red from his stare. She wanted to shift her body away, but Diamo Xian's grip tightened. He narrowed his peach blossom eyes, and the flowing light in his eyes stirred in a dark and mysterious way. His scorching gaze made Yiqing Luo's heart beat wildly, uncontrollably. It was clear that if she didn't explain herself clearly, she wouldn't be able to leave. She gritted her teeth and glared at him bashfully. With such an outstanding man like you by my side, good-looking, powerful, and giving me a sense of security, being able to ascend to the heavens and dive into the earth, capable of doing anything, do you think I'd be interested in any other lousy suitors? A flurry of praises successfully pleased Diamo Xian. It also greatly satisfied a certain man's self-esteem. The dark clouds on the face with the strange smile finally dispersed, revealing a satisfied smile. He let go of her face, put his arms around her waist and leaned back slightly. His gaze seemed to be looking towards a certain direction. His eyes were filled with complacency and provocation. Yiqing Luo was puzzled and was about to follow Diamo Xian's gaze. But the man suddenly straightened his body. Her face bumped against his chest. The man's low and hoarse voice rang beside her ears. I want to eat something. As soon as he entered the banquet, he felt a gaze staring at him from the moment he appeared. That gaze was filled with intense hostility. Following that, he looked at Gu Jingyu's gaze when he looked at Yiqing Luo. What else did Diamo Xian not understand? That Sha wanted his woman? His little Luo, or would only belong to him? Let that rotten peach blossom watch him and his little Luo, or being so lovey-dovey. Diamo Xian hid the chilly provocation in his eyes. When he looked at Yiqing Luo again, it was filled with deep affection. Wind Valley Sect's representative seat. Gu Jingyu sat stiffly on the ground. His eyes widened in disbelief. On a closer look, he could see that his body was trembling continuously. He saw the provocative gaze from the overlord. Chapter 2588. So, Diamo Xian did it on purpose to let him see the sweetness between him and Yi Luo. To make him give up completely? He had to admit it. When he saw Yi Luo nestling in Diamo Xian's arms, feeding him pastries personally and playing with him, his heart felt a sharp pain as if it was stabbed by a sharp knife, but at the same time he was very clear that there was no possibility between him and Yi Luo. Yi Luo was only like a real woman in front of Diamo Xian. He saw Yi Luo's lips, a sincere smile. He saw Yi Luo's face, a blissful and sweet expression. He saw Yi Luo like an ordinary young lady, snuggling in her lover's arms, shy and playful. He saw all of these no matter how hard he tried. And absolutely could not see such an expression on Yi Luo's face. He still remembered. When they were in Bu family village. Elder T misunderstood that they were a young couple. Misunderstood that they were going to Saint Spring to pray for children. She had never been shy before. But in Mo Xian's arms she would reveal a real woman's shy expression. Gu Jingyu helplessly clenched his fists tightly. After that he shut his eyes helplessly. Really? Give up? Give up on him till now, after so much difficulty he finally had a change of heart? Young sect master, you don't tell me that towards that lady? Great Elder Gu, who was beside him, had been paying attention to Gu Jingyu's expression, and immediately his face sunk as he asked in shock. Gu Jingyu's body, which was leaning against the back of the chair, became increasingly stiff. He remained silent. But coincidentally, it also verified Great Elder Gu's guess. Great Elder Gu's face sunk as he shouted sternly, "Don't mess around. There are many women under the heavens, you absolutely cannot touch that lady." But no matter what he said, Gu Jingyu kept his eyes closed, refusing to talk to anyone. Great Elder Gu's frown became even tighter. A pair of gloomy eyes shuttled back and forth between Yiqing Luo and Gu Jingyu. Lil Luo Mo Xian didn't know how many times he had called out her name. But the young lady refused to bother about him. Looked like she was really shy. It was true that he was angry out of humiliation. He softened his tone and coaxed gently, "Lil Luo, I haven't seen you for a full 23 days. I miss you. I miss you so much that I'm going crazy. It wasn't easy to return to your side, my entire body is missing you." He was speaking words of love in a serious manner. Amidst the words of love, he did not forget to add a few words to seduce her. This man, it was really infuriating and funny. Yiqing Luo didn't know how to ridicule him. "If you continue to ignore me, I will." Seeing that Yiqing Luo still refused to raise her head, a trace of craftiness flashed past Mo Xian's eyes. The body of the person in his arms stiffened slightly. It seemed to be full of rage. The moment he said something out of line, she looked like she was about to lash out at him. Mo Xian leaned close to her ear, his low and hoarse voice was mellow like fine wine, intoxicating one's heart. "Wife, your husband knows his mistake. F***ck. F***ck. What the F***ck, this ultimate move was too much of a cheat." Yiqing Luo's fingers instinctively gripped Mo Xian's collar tightly. Her cheeks turned red with a whoosh under this murmur. She raised her head and stared angrily at him. "Who's your wife? Don't mess around." The word "call" had yet to come out from her mouth. She went into a daze. What she met was the man's pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes, overflowing with brilliant colors, extremely resplendent. His eyes were filled with tenderness, as though he was carrying a pool of peach blossom spring water. Chapter 2589. Have you forgiven your husband? Looking at Yiqing Luo's flushed cheeks, her eyes filled with astonishment as she stared at his face in a daze, that adorable look. A certain man's pride had once again received a huge satisfaction. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes stared at him resentfully, displaying a little girl's coquettish attitude. "It's not impossible to forgive you, but at the birthday banquet, stop fooling around." They were the focus of attention. Quite a number of people's gazes were placed on them. Small fights, sweet love, she didn't mind showing it to those people. But if it was too much, she didn't have the hobby of a live broadcast. "How would I dare to disobey my wife's orders?" Mo Xian put on an easygoing look, his shimmering peach blossom eyes filled with warmth. Yiqing Luo pouted coquettishly as she stared at him, before shifting her gaze onto the birthday banquet. The moment she lifted her eyes, she met with a pair of jealous and hateful eyes. His gaze was filled with resentment. When Yiqing Luo's gaze met with that gaze, the owner of that pair of eyes then hurriedly averted her gaze as she lowered her head. "Miao Rongrong." Yiqing Luo raised her brows as her lips curled into an interesting arc. She wasn't surprised that Miao Rongrong hated her out of jealousy. If it wasn't for the poison on Miao Rongrong restraining her, probably. Miao Rongrong had long been the same as Lan Ling Nuo and Xia Ling Ling, not letting go of any chance to humiliate her. Yiqing Luo touched her chin as she gave a meaningful smile. It could be said that the poison she planted on Miao Rongrong had saved the entire Miao Gu family. Otherwise, they would have been carried out together with the Northern Wave's royal family. There would definitely be people from the Jianghu family. But apparently Miao Rongrong didn't think so. Looking at Miao Rongrong's jealous and hateful expression, yet extremely fearful of her, not daring to show it in front of her, Yiqing Luo expressed that it was extremely satisfying. She liked to see the other party being annoyed by her, yet unable to get rid of her. Yiqing Luo's complacency naturally fell into Miao Rongrong's eyes. Little slut. Miao Rongrong gritted her teeth as she cursed in a low voice. Miao Jingwei, who was at the side, quickly grabbed her arm. Do you want the Miaogu clan to become the current Northern Wave imperial family? Miao Rongrong was so infuriated that her face turned red, but she was afraid of Diamo Xian's presence, so she could only suppress all the words in her throat. Rongrong. Miao Yixiong, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke up. His gaze was sharp as he stared at Diamo Xian without blinking. Miao Rongrong pursed her lips and returned to Miao Yixiong's side, calling out in a low voice, "Father." On the surface, the father-daughter relationship between Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong could be described as a model father-daughter relationship. The father was kind and the daughter was filial and spoiled. However, they all knew very well what the truth was. In the end, they were just using each other. Once the other party no longer had any value to him, they would definitely not hesitate to abandon the other party and seek the greatest benefits for themselves. Do you want Dizun or not? Miao Yixiong's voice was cold, with a hint of determination. Miao Rongrong's eyes widened. Father, you mean, if you can become Diamo Xian's woman and make Diamo Xian listen to your orders? Just a mere Yi Luo and nothing to be afraid of. Miao Yixiong's eyes were raging with a storm. His words bewitched Miao Rongrong as she was extremely tempted. I want. Miao Rongrong clenched her fists tightly as her gaze shifted onto Diamo Xian. How could she not want such a peerless man? If today the person standing beside Diamo Xian was her. Chapter 2590. Alright then. When the birthday banquet is over, we'll ask for the antidote as an excuse. Miao Yixiong lowered his voice, his eyes cold and sinister. Hearing Miao Yixiong's words, Miao Rongrong's eyes gradually widened as joy and excitement surfaced in her eyes. He kept nodding his head, indicating that he would follow Miao Yixiong's orders. They were all staring at him openly. How could the two of them, with their superb perception, not sense it? Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she shot a sideways glance at Miao Rongrong. At this moment, the woman was staring at the two of them with shining eyes. What are the Miao people trying to do this time? Yiqing Luo was extremely unhappy with Miao Rongrong's gaze. Diamo Xian locked her waist as he smiled lightly. No matter if you're unhappy, just bring her back to the West Continent by force. I have plenty of ways to make her help Long Yunjian suppress the parasite poison. Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him. Honey trap. I'll only use this trick on you. He moved closer to her lips. His low and husky voice made her weak all over. The next moment, Diamo Xian's long arm tightened and her delicate body immediately fell into his arms. His handsome face was reflected in her eyes at such a close distance. A honey trap. These three words flashed past Yiqing Luo's mind. She deeply expressed that she really could not resist Diamo Xian's honey trap. Looking at the little woman's bashful look, Diamo Xian couldn't hold back as he lowered his head and gave her a light peck on her pink lips, his fingers sinking into her fine black hair. So, Lil Luo, don't worry, I will not attract any rotten peaches flowers. Yiqing Luo expressed. Why did she feel that this man emphasized on the three words rotten peach blossom? Was he hinting at something? The birthday banquet lasted for about 2 hours. The atmosphere in the hall finally eased up. Everyone could feel that Dizun had placed all his attention on the girl. He didn't care about their existence at all. Everyone loosened up. Gradually, some of the more daring people began to let their own daughters go and perform. All kinds of talents, colorful and dazzling. These high-ranking officials and nobles were all thinking the same thing. Since Dizun also needed a woman by his side. Their daughter was definitely prettier than Yi Luo. Although he was not as strong as Yi Luo. However, Dizun was already strong enough. Even if he didn't need his own woman, he still needed to be strong enough to make people's hair stand on end. Women should be as gentle as water, and it was enough for them to accept everything about a man. After those young ladies saw Diamo Xian, their hearts had already fallen onto him. He looked at Yi Luo's face, which could barely be considered delicate and pretty. One by one, the gorgeously dressed young ladies suddenly felt their confidence rising. Yi Luo, who was not particularly good-looking, was doted on by his majesty. If it was them, the overlord would definitely pamper them to the heavens. As a result, there was an endless stream of shocking and dazzling talents. However, these people were destined to make the wrong calculation. Because no matter how amazing and dazzling their talents were, from the beginning till the end, Dmo Xian had never shifted his vision away from Yiqing Luo. His gaze seemed to be glued onto Yiqing Luo. He couldn't bear to leave for even a moment. The birthday banquet had turned into a battle of beauty and beauty. Yin Qinghao, who was sitting on the main seat, looked at those young ladies, using the excuse of birthday celebration to perform all kinds of talents in an attempt to seduce the overlord. Chapter 2591. Her ears were filled with melodious music and the entire hall was bustling with noise and excitement. Yiqing Luo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, as though she was about to fall asleep in his arms. Until a burst of cheers woke Yiqing Luo up. She lazily opened her eyes and looked towards the center of the hall. The surrounding music had already been replaced by an extremely light and cheerful tune. It was different from the melodious tune which those young ladies danced earlier. It had a hint of exotic flavor. Following that, dancers dressed in dance dresses swayed their waists as they slowly entered the hall. The dancing dresses these dancers wore were also full of exotic charm. Their upper bodies were tightly clinging to their bodies, as though they were wearing a tube-top gold-colored dress. It was extremely short, only reaching to the waist, revealing their tummies. Their lower bodies were wearing the same color-long skirt, reaching to the knee as though a golden flower had bloomed. The outer layer was covered with a layer of golden chiffon, which made their graceful bodies indistinctly visible, extremely seductive. Along with the dancers swaying, their skirts fluttered, looking extremely beautiful. This dance was filled with exotic flavor and was filled with a fresh feeling. Instantly, it attracted numerous cheers from the crowd. Just as Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and looked towards the center of the hall, an even louder cheer and cheers resounded throughout the entire hall. She saw a lady dressed in the same style as the dancers, but with a different color, descending from the sky. She was dressed in a red dance dress and a red chiffon, which made her beautiful figure appear even more alluring. She held onto the hair of a different race. Her wrists and ankles were all adorned with rings of bright-colored accessories, giving off a crisp tinkling sound. When she saw that bright and beautiful face clearly, Yiqing Luo's entire being awoke. This alluring lady who was dancing in the middle of the hall. Wasn't it Miao Rongrong from the Miaogu family? Such a proud and arrogant lady was about to take part in the sacred maiden selection. She actually danced in public on this occasion? Yiqing Luo expressed that although she wasn't familiar with Miao Rongrong, but based on her character, she knew from her interactions. Miao Rongrong would absolutely not lower herself to perform in front of so many guests. And in such an alluring manner. The dance from the Miao tribe made everyone feel fresh. Furthermore, Miao Rongrong was the eldest daughter of the Miao tribe and the future holy maiden of the Miao tribe. Everyone naturally gave him face. The cheers went on and on. As she was jumping, Yiqing Luo sensed something strange. Miao Rongrong danced gracefully, constantly changing her movements. Then, as he stroked his hair flirtatiously, his gaze was directed directly at her. No, he was looking at Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo abruptly sat up straight. She narrowed her eyes and stared at Miao Rongrong. Miao Rongrong noticed her gaze. Instead of hiding, she raised her brows in provocation and unscrupulously flashed a coquettish smile at Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened, her little hand circled around the man's body and pinched his waist fiercely. Is this what you meant by not attracting rotten suitors? Dmo Xian's eyes revealed a puzzled expression, as though he didn't understand the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. Yiqing Luo raised her head and both her hands pinched Dmo Xian's cheeks. His gaze was fixed on her from beginning to end. This knowledge made the jealousy in Yiqing Luo's heart dissipate a little. But the minute she thought of those women expressing their goodwill to Dmo Xian, she felt extremely uncomfortable. Chapter 2592. Dmo Xian's gaze lingered on Miao Rongrong for a moment. Very quickly he raised his palm and held Yiqing Luo's little hand. Following that, his gaze fell onto Yiqing Luo once again. Seeing Yiqing Luo puffing her cheeks in anger, her brows were filled with an unhappy expression. His lips curled up into a devilish smile. His little Luo was jealous. Jealousy didn't mean that he didn't trust her. It wasn't that he wasn't confident in himself, but because he cared. Because he loved her so deeply. Therefore there was no room for even a speck of sand. Just like how he did not want to see anyone. Xiao Xiao missed Lil Luo air. Just like how Lil Luo didn't want anyone to miss him. You're still laughing. Yiqing Luo stared at him angrily as she pinched his face fiercely. Did you see a beauty throwing flirtatious glances at you and fell for her? Diamo Xian allowed her to do whatever she wanted as the smile on his face deepened. He met her resentful eyes and chuckled. No, I'm washing my eyes, he said word by word. His voice was gentle and magnetic. His burning gaze. It was as if it had turned into a soft feather, slowly drifting into her heart. In her heart it was restless. He glanced at Miao Rongrong. He immediately looked at her. He said he was washing his eyes. She had to admit that these 3 words completely pleased her. Her mood instantly became joyful. She arched her eyebrows and snorted. That's more like it. The two of them looked at each other, smiling sweetly. Pink bubbles bubbled in their eyes. Because of Miao Yixiong's words, Miao Rongrong had already treated Diamo Xian as her own man. His actions and gaze were almost completely obvious. She was interested in Di Zun. Just now Diamo Xian looked at her. Let her heart, unable to control the crazy beating. Countless young ladies performed. The Overlord didn't even bat an eyelid. And the Overlord only looked at her. She knew it, with her appearance. With her position in the Miao tribe. The Overlord will definitely like her. Yiluo, that slut. How dare he seize her man. But, when he thought of the fact that his antidote was still in that slut's hands, she could only suppress the jealousy in her heart. Humph, when the Overlord is completely infatuated with her and only belongs to her. Let's see how she's going to deal with that bitch. The dance ended amidst the cheers of the crowd. The surrounding Miao tribe dancers had already retreated. Miao Rongrong was still standing in the field. The breeze fluttered her red dance dress and red chiffon. Her exquisite and well-proportioned body was faintly discernible and extremely alluring. The corners of her mouth curled up into a charming smile. Her hand moved and a white jade wine cup appeared out of nowhere. She swayed her hips and walked towards the first row of seats with graceful steps. The cheers in the surroundings gradually died down. When he realized what Miao Rongrong was going to do, they all held their breaths and watched this scene nervously. Many of the young ladies clutched their handkerchiefs nervously. They were all looking forward to Di Zun's reaction. Sure enough, Miao Rongrong held the wine glass and stopped in front of Diamo Xian. She bent her knees slightly and made a gesture. Her eyes were almost greedily staring at Diamo Xian's peerless face. Her eyes were filled with infatuation. Just thinking that this man was going to belong to her. Her heart couldn't stop pounding. Chapter 2593. Silence, a deathly silence. Silence for a moment. The smile on Miao Rongrong's face froze. She stared at Diamo Xian's side profile. His handsome face was flawless. She took a deep breath and took another step closer. Her body leaned against the long table in front of Diamo Xian. Miao Rongrong stretched out her hand and passed the wine glass in her hand to Diamo Xian. Rongrong is so dedicated in her dance, Overlord, can you have a drink with Rongrong? She pinched her voice as she spoke coquettishly. The jade-like fingers and the white jade wine glass matched each other. It accentuated the lady's skin even more. If it was any other man, he would probably not be able to control himself as he grabbed this jade-like hand and bit it into his mouth. This hand stretched over. Just happened to stretch out between Yiqing Luo and Diamo Xian. No matter what, Diamo Xian must have seen this hand. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she smiled at the hand and looked at Miao Rongrong. Between her long and narrow eyes, there was a hint of ridicule and mockery. Miao Rongrong tensed up when she was stared at by Yiqing Luo. She felt chills running down her spine as all her courage was almost crushed. However, she quickly adjusted her mentality. She was going to be the Overlord's woman soon. Very soon, the Overlord would belong to her alone. By then she would make Yi Luo die however she wanted him to die. The viciousness in Miao Rongrong's eyes flashed past. Her red lips rose as she pretended not to see Yiqing Luo. She stared at Diamo Xian and smiled coquettishly. Overlord. Just have a drink with Rongrong? Her coquettish voice dragged the last syllable. Could simply melt one to death. However, Diamo Xian's expression didn't change at all. Looking at the swaying arm in front of him, blocking his intimacy with Yiqing Luo, he frowned slightly. Following that, he stretched out his hand. Miao Rongrong saw him moving and her face lit up as her lips uncontrollably curled upwards. Indeed, the Overlord had special feelings for her. Seeing the Overlord's hand getting closer to her, Miao Rongrong's body relaxed and became softer, as though she could fall into Diamo Xian's arms anytime. However, Diamo Xian's hand skipped over the wine glass that Miao Rongrong handed over and grabbed the 2 bamboo chopsticks on the table. Bang! With a crisp sound, the porcelain pieces shattered. Ah! Then there was a blood-curdling scream. Miao Rongrong felt a sharp pain in her arm. The wine cup in his hand flew out and shattered into pieces. Miao Rongrong stood rooted to the ground in a daze, one hand supporting her seemingly broken arm, as she looked at Diamo Xian in disbelief. There were 2 obvious red marks on her fair, jade-like wrist. It was the marks left by the 2 bamboo chopsticks in Diamo Xian's hands. Diamo Xian casually threw the chopsticks on the ground, as if the chopsticks were contaminated with some germs, extremely disgusted. Then he lazily lifted his peach blossom eyes. His inky black eyes shone with a bloodthirsty light. Dizun. Miao Rongrong trembled as he stared at her. Diamo Xian frowned, his thin lips moved slightly and his voice was icy cold. Who are you? Don't disturb me while I coax my wife. The surrounding guests were extremely anxious and looking forward to hearing the overlord's reply. Instantly they couldn't hold it in as they burst out laughing with a puffed sound. The Miao family's eldest young miss obviously stroked her hair coquettishly and threw herself into his arms. And even showed off her flirtatious attitude, as though she wanted to take down the overlord. And even took the initiative to toast to the overlord. She self-directed and acted out such a long show. Unexpectedly. Chapter 2594. To put it more accurately. Eldest young Miss Miao had been flirting for a while. The overlord didn't even pay any attention. The guests present seemed to have heard the sound of slapping on Miao Rongrong's face. It was extremely ironic. Miao Rongrong's wrist was pinched by those 2 bamboo chopsticks till she couldn't move at all. Her face was pale as she saw numerous mocking eyes staring at her. She only felt resentful and humiliated. Scram. An icy cold word came out from Diamo Xian's mouth, without the slightest bit of tenderness towards the fairer sex. If it wasn't for the fact that Yi Qing Luo still needed Miao Rongrong to suppress the poison for Long Yunzhan, Miao Rongrong would definitely be carried down now. Miao Rongrong's petite body trembled as she bit her lower lip tightly. She gave Yi Qing Luo a resentful stare. After that, under Diamo Xian's icy cold gaze, she dejectedly held onto her broken hand and returned to the Miao Gu family's place. Miao Yixiong's face was steely green. The gaze he gave Miao Rongrong seemed as though he wanted to tear her into pieces. Miao Rongrong had always been sought after and pampered since she was young. This was the first time she was rejected by a man in public. Now she was criticized by Miao Yixiong with such a stern gaze. Miao Rongrong felt aggrieved as her eyes turned red instantly. Useless thing. Miao Yixiong frowned as he berated her coldly. Miao Rongrong stared at Miao Yixiong angrily but couldn't find any words to refute. Miao Yixiong gave a cold snort. I've painstakingly raised you to such a good look but you can't even seduce a man and you still have the cheek to cry? Miao Rongrong lowered her head as her hands hung on her thighs as she clenched her fists tightly. Numerous gazes were still desperately looking at Miao Rongrong. Miao Yixiong felt even more embarrassed. If it wasn't for the fact that this was Yin Qinghao's birthday banquet, Miao Yixiong probably would have stood up and left. The atmosphere was extremely awkward and tense. Miao Jingwei looked at the constantly drifting gazes, and at the father and daughter pair who were sulking in silence. He was afraid that this scene would become a laughing stock for everyone. He looked at the Lord Dizun who was whispering something to Yi Luo. He coughed softly and said in a low voice, Clan leader Rongrong, don't be discouraged. In my opinion, the Lord Dizun has feelings for Rongrong. Miao Rongrong's body trembled. She suddenly raised her head and stared at Miao Jingwei with reddened eyes. Miao Yixiong's gaze also shifted to him. Miao Jingwei glanced at Dizun and said, Rongrong is courting Dizun in public. If Dizun accepts it on the spot, won't people laugh at him for being a flirtatious Dizun? He's Dizun. Even if he's a playboy, it's normal for him to have a harem of 3,000 women. Miao Yixiong did not agree with Miao Jingwei's opinion. Yi Luo's looks aren't outstanding. At most, her strength and talent are passable. However, compared to the overlord, her talent is nothing. Why would the overlord like such a girl with no merits? Miao Jingwei continued to analyze. Therefore Yi Luo must have something that the overlord needs. That's why the overlord would pretend to dote on Yi Luo. Naturally, he wouldn't accept Rongrong's flattery in front of Yi Luo. Miao Yixiong pondered over Miao Jingwei's words. What he said was not unreasonable. Think about it. Just now they offended the royal family of North Lan, Xia Lingling, and Lan Ling Nua. Look at our Rong Rong. Isn't it obvious that she's different? Chapter 2595. Right. That's right. If it wasn't for the fact that the Overlord had no feelings for Rong Rong, he wouldn't let Rong Rong off so easily. The expression on Miao Yixiong's face eased up. His lips curled into a smile as he patted Miao Rongrong's shoulder lightly. Good girl, seduce the Overlord well and leave the rest to father. I guarantee that the Overlord will listen to you only. Miao Rongrong's emotions were also stirred up by Miao Jingwei's words. She sneaked a glance at Diamo Xian's direction. That deep and handsome side profile made her heart tremble violently. She nodded vigorously. In her mind, the image of the Overlord hugging her in his arms with a doting gaze appeared. You still dare to say that you don't attract rotten peach blossoms? Yiqing Luo snorted with a displeased look. Diamo Xian's arms circled her waist tightly. It seems that someone has attracted more rotten peach blossoms than me. It seemed that ever since he came back, he had been biting on the words rotten peach blossoms, as though she had really hooked up with a lot of peach blossoms. She rolled her eyes and poked his face with her finger. What rotten peach blossoms do I have? I have already explained the matter regarding Yin Yanxiu very clearly. A certain arrogant man gave a light snort. Yiqing Luo? This style, wasn't it a little strange? Overlord, are you trying to ruin your image? A certain Overlord expressed that in front of his wife, there was no need for any image. He narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes and suddenly increased his strength, fiercely pushing her into his arms. Yiqing Luo's little face crashed into his hard chest. She hadn't had the chance to express her dissatisfaction. Diamo Xian's displeased low and hoarse voice came into her ears. Are you deliberately hiding it from me, or do you really not know? Yiqing Luo was dumbfounded. Just as she was about to raise her head and ask what he meant, he suddenly lowered his head and opened his mouth to bite her neck. His teeth were a little forceful. She could feel a tingling feeling. Yiqing Luo punched him with her fist in pain. Her gaze went past Diamo Xian's tall body and glanced at a certain figure. Her body suddenly stiffened. You're jealous of that young sect Master Gu? Yiqing Luo recalled Diamo Xian's awkward look as she coughed lightly and asked. The teeth that were biting her neck loosened slightly. Immediately after, another round of forceful chewing. Although it was a bite, it was not really a bite. Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the touch of his tongue as it swept past her skin. Her body trembled slightly. She clutched the clothes on the man's back with both hands. This was his tacit agreement. Not far behind Diamo Xian was probably the 10th row. Gu Jingyu's eyes were glued to them without blinking. From afar, Yiqing Luo could see Gu Jingyu's eyes, which were filled with sorrow, unwillingness and pain. As though he was unable to accept the sweet love between her and Diamo Xian. Xian, I didn't hide it, I just forgot. She immediately explained. However, the man who was hugging her tightened his grip on her delicate body and increased the strength of his teeth. Yiqing Luo groaned in pain. She struggled. Xian, I really forgot, stop fooling around. Although Miao Rongrong shared most of the attention, but there were still quite a number of people who were looking at them. He bit her like this. Wouldn't it damage his prestige as an overlord? Diamo Xian refused to let go. Yiqing Luo's struggling temper came. Her little hands pinched hard on his firm waist. The hard muscles felt great. She didn't have the mood to feel it as she gritted her teeth and shouted angrily, I didn't even treat him as a rotten peach blossom. I totally didn't treat him as anything. Why are you still tangling with him for? The man who was hugging her finally loosened his strength. His mouth also moved away from her neck. Yiqing Luo continued to pinch his muscles and refused to let go. Did you bring the vinegar jar with you? If I really brought it with me, he wouldn't be sitting there alive. Diamo Xian gave a cold harumph, totally not intending to conceal his jealousy. He was Diamo Xian's woman. Dared to peep? If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't want to disturb Yin Qinghao's birthday banquet. Chapter 2596. Listening to her own man, her mouth was filled with jealousy. Yiqing Luo hooked one arm around his neck, while the other hand was pinching the muscles on his waist. Immediately, facing Gu Jingyu's gaze, she took the initiative to bend her head and kissed Diamo Xian's lips. A kiss, a light touch. She shifted her body, her little hand slid up along his waist, grabbing his black hair which was hanging on his shoulder. Her fingers hooked lightly, twining his black hair around her fingertips and tugged slightly. Are you satisfied now? She looked at Gu Jingyu and then kissed Diamo Xian, which was to show Gu Jingyu her relationship with Diamo Xian. This action indeed pleased Diamo Xian. His brows rose slightly, the long and narrow arc, demonic and seductive. Mo Yao's peach blossom eyes were dyed with bewitching rays as he gave a low laugh, satisfied. Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes and loosened the mischievous hand on his waist. This man's body seemed to be made of stone. Her fingers were hurting from the pinching. But the man didn't make a sound. She threw herself into Diamo Xian's arms and looked at the performance area in front. Because of Miao Rongrong. Everyone also knew about the overlord's love and pampering towards Yi Luo. All of them also dispelled the idea of seducing the overlord. They obediently watched Yin Yanxiu's birthday performance for Yin Qinghao. 10th row seats. Gu Jingyu sat stiffly on his seat. The wine glass in his hand rolled onto the ground. He stared blankly in front at the direction of Yi Luo and the overlord. His heart was torn in bursts. He closed his eyes in pain. In his mind Yi Luo's gaze replaying the scene. As if telling him, look, this is my fiancé. The scene where she took the initiative to kiss the overlord. She intentionally kissed him for him to see. She intentionally wanted him to give up. He admitted Yi Luo had done it. His heart was already like dead ashes. The birthday banquet continued for another 2 hours. It was nearing the end. Yin Qinghao passionately invited Diamo Xian, ghost martial artist, and the rest of the Heavenly Academy to stay at Qingyue clan. In another month, it would be the selection for the Holy Maiden of the Miao tribe. There were also many people who were extremely interested in the Miao tribe. They wanted to take the opportunity to watch the Holy Maiden selection in a month's time. Old man Guiyu let Yen Xiaoyi and the rest attend Yin Qinghao's birthday banquet as representatives. At the same time they could go to the Miao tribe to gain some experience. Diamo Xian and Yi Qing Luo naturally had no objections. Thus, the group stayed in the Great Pleasure Sect and arranged for guest rooms. Just as Yi Qing Luo and the rest followed housekeeper Yin towards the guest room area. Miao Yixiong led Miao Rongrong forward with a big smile on his face. Faction leader Yin, it's rare for us to leave the Miao tribe, and we're planning to have fun in Qingyue City for a few days. Can you give us 2 rooms? Yin Qinghao's smiling face froze. The surrounding guests who were leaving also looked at the Miao people with disdain. Who didn't know that the Miao tribe had a motive for staying in the Qinyu sect? Obviously, the overlord's attitude towards Miao Rongrong did not dissuade the Miao people. In the eyes of the guests, Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong were like a joke. However, Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong totally disregarded the surrounding people who were pointing at them, as they looked at Yin Qinghao with smiles on their faces. Yin Qinghao awkwardly looked towards the direction of Diamo Xian and the rest. Those who come are guests. Faction leader Yin, since the Miao tribe leader wants to stay in the Qinyu sect, then let them stay. Yi Qing Luo chuckled as she shot a glance at Miao Yixiong. Star. Chapter 2597. This, Yin Qinghao looked at Miao Yixiong, who was smiling sincerely and still felt that something was wrong. Anyone could tell that Miao Yixiong had brought Miao Rongrong to the Qingyue sect because of the Dizun. Let them stay. Wouldn't that give them a chance to harass Dizun? It was not easy for him to convince Dizun, Guiwu, and the others to stay in the Qingyue clan. If Miao Yixiong angered Dizun, wouldn't that be venting their anger on him? No matter, even if eldest young Miss Miao wants to seduce Miao Xian, she doesn't have the capital, so I don't think much of her. Yi Qing Luo said with a smile. Miao Rongrong, who was at the side, heard it very clearly. She was so angry that she almost wanted to retort. Before she could speak, Miao Yixiong grabbed her tightly. Miao Rongrong suppressed her anger, her eyes filled with coldness. Did he have the capital? Yi Luo, that little slut, doesn't have the final say. She was waiting for the overlord to listen only to her. When he only doted on her, she wanted Yi Luo to have a taste of what it felt like to be in pain. Yin Qinghao found it hard to refuse. After all, the Miaogu aristocrat clan's patriarch had personally spoken. He had been afraid of the Dizun and had not dared to agree to it easily. He was also worried that it would affect him. But Yi Qing Luo had an indifferent attitude. He nodded his head and ordered his men to bring the few Miao people to the guest room. But he specially instructed them to separate the courtyards of the Miao people and Yi Qing Luo and the others to the furthest. Yi Qing Luo and the rest were arranged to stay in a courtyard, separated into several small rooms. Although it was called a small room, it was actually not that small. Moreover, the interior design was extremely elegant. It could be seen that this courtyard was usually used to receive important guests. Originally, Yiqing Luo and Dimo Xian were in two separate rooms. But under Dimo Xian's silent gaze, Steward Yin was so frightened that he swallowed back the words he wanted to say to separate them. After that, he arranged for the two of them to stay in the most spacious and most elegant husband and wife guest room. Yiqing Luo expressed, her clean reputation really no longer existed. Fortunately, the people from the Qinyu sect did not look at them as if they were unmarried and living with a man. It wasn't that he didn't dare. Instead, everyone felt that it was very normal. Because of the way Di Zun doted on Yi Luo. She wanted nothing more than to stick to Yi Luo. They should be in the same room. At least Yi Luo was here. There was still someone who could soothe Di Zun. The most important thing was, the overlord had already called Yi Luo's name in front of everyone at the banquet. Mother's son. Perhaps Yi Luo had already married his majesty. Yi Luo might even be the mistress of the imperial palace. Hence, when Yiqing Luo saw this couple's room, some extremely ambiguous, seductive props, he was completely dumbfounded. Weren't these ancient people a little too open-minded? What kind of person did they treat Dimo Xian as? They couldn't handle such a hardcore thing. What's the matter? Dimo Xian asked softly as he saw Yiqing Luo standing motionlessly beside a wooden cabinet. His voice caused the little woman's body to suddenly jump. She quickly turned around and opened her arms. Her cheeks were so red that they seemed to be dripping water. No, nothing. What's behind? Dimo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes. No, nothing at all. Yiqing Luo coughed violently as her hands hurriedly closed the cabinet. Go. Let's go rest, go rest. Dimo Xian was pushed into the inner room by Yiqing Luo. His upper body's weight was almost all on Yiqing Luo's hands. Chapter 2598. Yiqing Luo avoided his gaze and pursed her lips. I'm not nervous. This sound came from the man's nose. It was extremely sexy and flirtatious. Yiqing Luo's hands trembled slightly and almost couldn't control herself. And it was this tremble that gave the man an opportunity. Dimo Xian's large palm suddenly clasped her wrist. Immediately after, her body was like a feather, flying in a circle and trapped in Dimo Xian's arms. She widened her eyes and wanted to struggle. The man's arms seemed to know her movements. He had trapped her in his arms early on. Let me see, what are you trying to hide from me? Dimo Xian carried her and walked towards the wooden cabinet. Yiqing Luo's feet stepped on the ground, gathering all her strength, and refused to move. How could her strength match Dimo Xian? No matter how she tried to stop him. Dimo Xian could easily hold her as they got closer to the wooden cabinet. The closer they got, Yiqing Luo's cheeks were dyed red and the panic in her eyes was even more obvious. The two of them stood in front of the wooden cabinet. He raised his hand and placed it on the cabinet door. The young lady stretched out her hand in panic and grabbed his arm. Xian, let's not be curious. I'm very interested in things that can make you so flustered. Dimo Xian's husky voice whispered in her ear. The deep meaning in his eyes seemed to be mixed with some kind of emotion. His broad palm fiercely hugged her slender waist, pressing her petite body tightly against his. Yiqing Luo's face blushed all the way to her ears. Creak. The cabinet door was opened. It revealed a dazzling array of things inside. What were iron chains, soft whips, silk cloth to cover one's eyes, or bracelets and ankles, as well as a variety of things that made one blush. Dimo Xian's hand slightly stiffened. Yiqing Luo was so embarrassed that she directly stuffed her head into Dimo Xian's arms. She expressed that in the modern era she had seen more various kinds of things than these. At that time her heart was without a ripple. But now, seeing these inferior things, her face was flushed and her heart was racing, unable to control it. Because the person standing beside her was Dimo Xian. You don't want me to see these? Dimo Xian's deep eyes drooped down as he gazed at the young lady in his arms, who was so shy that she didn't even want to raise her head. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled as she buried her head in his arms. One could see that her fair neck had been tainted with a faint shade of pink. Dimo Xian gave a low chuckle as his fingers tightened around her waist bit by bit. Being shy means that you know what these things are used for. The man's boiling hot body transmitted a scorching heat through his clothes. Yiqing Luo's heart was thumping as it kept trembling. The strength of the man's arms tightened. She could almost feel something pressing against her body. She who had been intimate with Diamo Xian before, how could she not understand the change in Diamo Xian at this moment? Could be said that during the birthday party, Diamo Xian was flirting with her as he responded. Tell me, how do you know? Diamo Xian lowered his head, his scorching breath teasing her skin. Yiqing Luo trembled even more fiercely. I just know. The young lady's sweet voice at this moment had an obvious coquettish tone. It seemed to be able to hook one's soul, emitting a suffocating charm. I know, why don't we try it one by one? Diamo Xian gave a low chuckle as he stretched out his other hand. 5 fingers moved gently on her face. Chapter 2599. The young lady's exquisite face was reflected in the man's burning pupils. The moment this familiar face appeared, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Diamo Xian's body suddenly tensed up. Both hands suddenly clasped her shoulders. Immediately she was carried up by the waist. Yiqing Luo was shocked and felt the man's stronger reaction. Her hands immediately hooked onto Diamo Xian's neck. At the same time, Diamo Xian's kiss landed accurately on her pink lips. This kiss was different from the previous simple touch. It was also different from the previous gentleness. But it was a kind of overbearing kiss, as if he wanted to swallow her into his stomach. Yiqing Luo's mind instantly went blank. Her whole body, almost hanging on Diamo Xian's body weakly, until her back sank into the soft mattress. She then woke up from her dream. Her little hand pushed his chest weakly. Beast, you. Before she could finish her protest, she was sealed once again. Yiqing Luo couldn't breathe. In the panic, she met Diamo Xian's fiery eyes. His hoarse voice rang beside her ear. Lil Luo, I miss you. All the time I miss you. Miss her, almost to the point of going crazy. His voice, his words, his gaze, made Yiqing Luo throw away her armor. Towards his deep feelings. She could never resist. In the end, she was eaten up cleanly, not a single residue was left. In the room the temperature was high. Faintly mixed with the young lady's panicked protest. Diamo Xian. Let me say this first, the things in the cupboard we will absolutely not play with. The group of people in the Joy sect had spent 3 days. The few Miao people who had been silent for the past few days finally couldn't hold back and started to take action. This day the group of people set up a few tables outside the courtyard. Yiqing Luo nestled in Diamo Xian's arms, discussing with Yan Xiaoyi and the rest about the Heavenly Academy. When Peach heard that, she directly said that she wanted to apply to enter the Devil class. Gui Wu, who was sitting at another table, remained silent. No one knew what he was thinking about. Zoemo was hugging Kitty Li, whispering something to her from time to time, which was rather sweet. The atmosphere was just right. But for some reason, Miao Yi and Shen Gui were sitting in a corner with their heads bowed, looking absent-minded. Especially Miao Yi. Since the end of the birthday banquet, he had not been able to lift his spirits. Even if Yiqing Luo took the initiative to talk to her, she didn't get much of a reaction. However, Yiqing Luo could roughly guess the reason. Thus, they didn't force Miao Yi to integrate into their atmosphere as soon as possible. While they were chatting, a deep laughter suddenly came from outside the courtyard. Looks like this courtyard is the liveliest. I should have come earlier to join in the fun. Miao Yixiong, who was dressed in the Miao tribe's attire, walked in with a big smile on his face. Miao Rongrong, who had obviously dressed up meticulously, followed behind him. In the corner, Miao Yi's body froze. Shen Gui immediately stood up and stood in front of Miao Yi. Miao Yi got up, grabbed Shen Gui's arm and quickly rushed into the room. Yiqing Luo's peripheral vision caught a glimpse of their departing figures as her eyes flashed past an extremely shallow and profound meaning. But she still put her attention on Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong, who were obviously here to find trouble. Overlord, Master Gui Wu, young Master Imo, Miao Yixiong walked in and greeted the 3 of them respectfully with a familiar look. Diamo Xian's head was still bowed, his large palm on Yiqing Luo's hair gently. Gui Wu was still in a deep state, maintaining his silence, not even lifting his eyelids. Zoemo was still hugging Kitty Li, lowered his head and secretly kissed Kitty Li's face. His eyes were filled with smiles, feeling very satisfied. Chapter 2600. But what kind of person was Miao Yixiong? He had already made up his mind to shamelessly send his daughter to Diamo Xian's side. This bit of awkwardness was nothing to him. Very quickly, Miao Yixiong continued with a smile. Rongrong had borrowed Qinyuesek's kitchen to make some snacks and specially sent it over for you to have a taste. Saying that, he took a look behind him. Miao Rongrong was carrying a bamboo basket which was covered with a silk cloth. Swaying her waist, she leisurely walked towards the table where Yiqing Luo and the rest were at. She placed the bamboo basket on the table. When the silk cloth was opened, it was filled with various exquisite fragrant pastries. One look and one smell and it was extremely appetizing. Miao Rongrong was standing beside Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo could clearly smell the fragrance from Miao Rongrong. It was extremely rich and made one's nose turn red. Overlord, have a taste. These are all made by me personally. A coquettish voice came out from Miao Rongrong's mouth. From the bamboo basket she took out a piece of brightly colored pastry that looked very delicious. She delicately handed it over. These are the special pastries of our Miao tribe. Other than the Miao tribe, no one else knows how to make them. As she said that, Miao Rongrong sent the pastries towards Dmo Xian's mouth. Yan Xiaoyi and the rest widened their eyes as they stared straight at the coquettish Miao Yi. Their hearts were filled with curses. This Miao Rongrong's brain was not working well, right? A few days ago at the birthday banquet, the overlord had already rejected her. Didn't she understand the situation? No. She actually went to seduce the overlord in front of Yiqing Luo. Didn't they see Yiqing Luo nestled in the overlord's arms? These Miao tribe people, were they tired of living and wanted to die early? Just as Miao Rongrong's hand which was holding the pastries was about to reach Dmo Xian's mouth, a pah sound was heard. Miao Rongrong's hand was hit by a burst of energy. She cried out in pain as the pastries in her hand fell onto the ground. She held onto her hand and staggered a few steps back. Dmo Xian slowly raised his head. His obsidian peach blossom eyes had a deep luster, as if it was a whirlpool of terror. Miao Rongrong's hand, which had been hit, was in so much pain that she felt wronged. After meeting Dmo Xian's gaze, all the grievances had vanished into thin air. Her heart was beating faster and faster. His eyes were filled with excitement. The overlord was looking at her. The overlord was indeed interested in her. Miao Rongrong was nervous and expectant. Her eyes were filled with emotion as she transmitted her love through her gaze. Following that, they saw Dmo Xian's thin lips moving, only to hear the icy cold words spitting out from his thin lips. Scram. Clean and efficient, without any hesitation. Miao Rongrong's expression froze. Chapter 2601. Eldest young Miss Miao's broken hand at the birthday banquet has yet to recover, and now she can't wait to extend her hand to be beaten. Yiqing Luo's clear voice had a hint of teasing. Could it be? Eldest young Miss Miao has fallen in love with the pleasure of having her wrist broken? Yan Xiaoyi and the rest laughed even louder when they heard that. Miao Rongrong only felt humiliated as her entire face flushed red. She looked at Yiqing Luo with a gaze filled with deep hatred. But when she turned towards Dmo Xian, it turned into love and grievance. Yiqing Luo naturally saw Miao Rongrong's gaze. She couldn't help but chuckle as her brows revealed a smile, yet not a smile of ridicule. Yiqing Luo expressed that she really didn't understand Miao Rongrong as a person. It had already come to this stage. Miao Rongrong still had the confidence to seduce Dmo Xian again and again? Although Yiqing Luo was very assured towards her own man. But there was such an irritating housefly that kept scuttling around her, and even came to harass her from time to time. It was quite annoying. The few of them giggled as they didn't leave any face for the Miao people. Miao Yixiong's expression turned darker. Miao Rongrong's hands clenched into fists as anger surfaced on her face. But very quickly she kept all her emotions. She took a deep breath and changed the expression on her face into a pitiful grievance look. Following that, she held onto her injured hand as she cried pitifully, Overlord, Rongrong only wanted to let you have a taste of the pastries that Rongrong made personally. These pastries are all made by Rongrong with all my heart, and contain Rongrong's sincerity. Miao Yixiong immediately continued, That's right, before the sky had even turned bright, Rongrong had already woken up to make pastries for the Overlord. From the ingredients to the handwork to the lighting of the fire. Rongrong did all these personally. These are all Rongrong's sincerity towards the Overlord. Another burst of laughter came from Yiqing Luo's mouth. She lifted her eyelids lazily as she sneered, Earlier, didn't Miao Yixiong say that these pastries are to have a taste? How did it become? Specially made for Xian? Miao Yixiong's face darkened, then he hurriedly explained, It's specially for everyone to try. That's good. Yiqing Luo sat up straight in Dmo Xian's arms. Nodding her head in satisfaction, she adjusted the expression on her face to look extremely arrogant and spoiled. I'm very jealous. I can't bear to see other women pestering my Xian. As she said that, she casually rolled up her fine black hair and leaned into Diamo Xian's embrace. I'm a very cruel person to those little bitches who pester my Xian. Miss Miao is such a beautiful young lady, don't take things too hard. Miao Rongrong's body trembled. Thinking of Yi Luo's strength as well as the goo poison that Yi Luo had placed in his body, Yi Luo's heart sank. His face gradually turned pale. Miao Yixiong forced a smile and tried to ease the atmosphere. Of course, we all know that His Majesty dotes on Miss Yi. As he spoke. At the same time he emphasized the word, unique pet. Chapter 2602. Following that, she didn't wait for Yiqing Luo to speak as she hurriedly cut in. Overlord status is noble and powerful. He's the hero in the hearts of all the ladies in Nirvana realm. I'm afraid there's no one who doesn't admire Overlord. As she said that, she used her pitiful eyes which were filled with tears to look at Diamo Xian affectionately. I admire Overlord, but I've never thought that I can be like Miss Yi, standing beside Overlord. I know I'm not worthy. She lowered her head as though she was trying to suppress her emotions. Yiqing Luo only felt it was funny when she heard that. Was this insinuating that she wasn't worthy of Diamo Xian? She only wanted to give Miao Rongrong 2 words, her. Rongrong. Miao Yixiong suddenly shouted. He looked at Diamo Xian in a fluster and immediately knelt down. Overlord, please forgive me, Rongrong didn't mean that. She absolutely didn't feel that Miss Yi isn't worthy to stand beside Overlord. She just admires Overlord too much. The crowd watching the show. Yiqing Luo? Even if this sentence really didn't have that meaning, being emphasized by Miao Yixiong, it was filled with that meaning. In the end, he was trying to insinuate that Yi Luo wasn't worthy to be in love with Diamo Xian. She wasn't worthy. Was Miao Rongrong worthy? This pair of father and daughter really had a wild imagination. Yiqing Luo knew that the reason why the Miao father and daughter stayed in Joy Sect was to let Miao Rongrong seduce Diamo Xian. She just wanted to see what tricks they were playing. So she didn't mind them staying in Joy Sect. After all, Miao Rongrong's poison needed her antidote very much. If she could make use of this opportunity to control Miao Rongrong completely and make Miao Rongrong follow her back to West Continent to settle Long Yunzhan's matter, that would be the best. But she didn't expect this pair of Miao father and daughter to be so stupid. After spending 3 days, they came up with this kind of method to disgust her? Trying to brainwash her and tell her that she wasn't worthy of Diamo Xian? At this moment, Miao Rongrong suddenly realized that she had said something wrong and lowered her head timidly. Sorry Miss Yi, I didn't mean it in this way, I was just answering your question. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. It's alright, I am different from you. You ordinary people are indeed not worthy of my Xian. Miao Rongrong was so angry that she clenched her fists tightly. Her face was distorted and she was about to explode. Miao Yixiong's face darkened as well. It was hard to believe that Yi Luo would be so thick-skinned. Dizun did not speak. They could only kneel on the ground, motionless. Miao Yixiong had been the leader of the Miao tribe for many years and was considered to have a high position of power. He had not knelt for many years. After kneeling for a while, he felt his legs go numb. Seeing that Dizun had no intention of talking to them, Dizun smiled. Miao Yixiong gritted his teeth. Dizun, Rongrong really didn't mean it that way. Please forgive Rongrong for the sake of Rongrong's admiration for you. Apparently he had directly ignored Yiqing Luo's shameless words. Miao Rongrong also cooperated and blinked her watery eyes, which were filled with love. The clamor made Diamo Xian frown. Because Yiqing Luo wanted to tease the Miao father and daughter duo, and also because Miao Rongrong still had some use. He didn't stop her and allowed Yiqing Luo to have fun. But these people's words made him extremely unhappy. Moreover, the clamor made him lose his patience. Chapter 2603. This gaze made Miao Rongrong's heart tremble fiercely. Her body couldn't stop trembling, filled with fear. Diamo Xian's lips curled up slightly as he spat out the icy cold words mercilessly. Who do you think you are? Your admiration will only make me feel disgusted. Miao Rongrong's eyes widened in disbelief. Immediately, Diamo Xian hugged Yiqing Luo's slender waist tightly, as he declared to take her into his arms. Word by word, he enunciated clearly, worthy or not, I have the final say. Speaking of which, I still feel that I am not worthy of Lil Luo, or As he said that, his long arm lifted the person in his arms. Slender fingers gently caressed her pink lips, his eyes were filled with gentleness. Lil Luo, being with me, it's been hard on you. An obvious difference in attitude. Even the way he addressed himself had an obvious change. This also showed Dimo Xian's obvious attitude. Looking at her own man, lowering his own status to stand up for her. Yiqing Luo naturally would not let down her man's good intentions. Her lips curled up slightly as she stretched out her arms and circled around his neck, smiling as she said, "Who asked you to be the man I love? This little grievance is nothing." Critical hit. 10,000 points of damage critical hit. Plus a ton of dog food. Yan Xiaoyi and the rest expressed that the sweet pink bubbles were almost blinding their dog eyes. Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong felt as though they had eaten a fly. Kneeling on the ground, they didn't know whether to leave or not. "Still not going to scram? Want me to personally make you scram?" Dimo Xian said coldly. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong didn't dare to stay any longer as they swiftly stood up and left the courtyard. Afraid that Dimo Xian would be unhappy, turning them into the same ending as the North Wave's royal family. Looking at the two of them leaving in a hurry, Yiqing Luo laughed and fell into Dimo Xian's arms. "Just this guts and still thinking of seducing you, becoming a person above others, aren't they too ambitious?" Dimo Xian gazed deeply at the person in his arms as his large palm gently covered her head, rubbing her fine black hair. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she asked curiously, "But, Xian, they've prepared for so long, surely it's not possible for them to give up so easily, right?" Yiqing Luo somehow felt that Miao Yixiong would not dismiss this idea so easily. "No matter, I will protect you." Dimo Xian did not put the Miao father and daughter in his eyes. In his eyes, those two people were at most props which Yiqing Luo could make use of. "I know you will protect me, but I always feel that it's better to be careful." Yiqing Luo looked towards the direction of the Miao father and daughter pair. A pair of charming eyes flashed with a deep dark light. Indeed, it was as what Yiqing Luo had guessed. Sending pastries, thinking that Yiqing Luo was not worthy to stand beside Dimo Xian and so on. It was just a foreshadowing for their follow-up. On the second day, housekeeper Yin came to Yiqing Luo's courtyard with a hesitant look. Yiqing Luo roughly guessed that it was related to the Miao father and daughter duo as she directly opened her mouth. "What do they want to do again?" Steward Yin was also very annoyed with the father and daughter. But he was only a steward of Qinyu sect. He hesitated for a moment as he stuttered, "Miao clan leader asked me to pass a message, hoping to have a private talk with Miss Yi." "Private? She alone?" Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. "Where?" Chapter 2604. There was definitely a trap. But Yiqing Luo was very curious. Miao Yixiong's target was Dimo Xian. Why would he ask her to meet him privately? Moreover, it just so happened that Dimo Xian was not in the courtyard. It was obvious that Miao Yixiong had been paying attention to her courtyard at all times. Dimo Xian left. Thus he asked Butler Yin to come. It seemed that he had made up his mind to meet her alone. "Miss Yi, I'll go and reject them for you." Housekeeper Yin saw Yiqing Luo remaining silent and immediately spoke out the words which he had been considering for a long time. To Yi Luo and her friends. Not to mention her close relationship with Gui Wu and Di Zun. It was because of their personalities and the way they conducted themselves that everyone in the Qinyu sect liked from the bottom of their hearts. Especially, Butler Yin knew that his young sect master really wanted to befriend Yi Luo and the others. At this moment, he naturally didn't wish for Yiqing Luo to be schemed against by those few Miao tribe people. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly as she pondered over Miao Yixiong's intentions. If he wanted to talk to her in private, Miao Yixiong could have taken the initiative to look for her. But now he had specially sent Butler Yin to deliver a message. If he wanted to attack her or do something to her, wouldn't it be an excuse to let Butler Yin come over with great fanfare? Therefore, could it be that Miao Yixiong really wanted to talk to her in private? Or it was about the antidote? He asked Housekeeper Yin to pass the message because he wanted Housekeeper Yin as a witness to prove that he had no intention of doing anything to her? He was deep in thought. Suddenly, an extremely scorching heat surged in her chest. It was constantly eroding her heart. It was the profound heart jade. The profound heart jade was reacting strangely. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. Her gaze followed the direction of the profound heart jade and looked towards the direction where that indescribable feeling came from. "Over there. What's there?" It seemed to be calling out to her. "Miss Yi?" Housekeeper Yin looked at Yiqing Luo's face, which had suddenly turned pale and instantly panicked. Miss Yi, are you alright? Do you need me to call the doctor? Yiqing Luo slowly shook her head as she tried her best to maintain the calmness of her breathing. Her gaze looked towards that direction as she asked hoarsely, "Over there, what is that place?" "The back garden," Butler Yin answered. "Back garden? The place where Miao Yixiong arranged to meet her? What did Miao Yixiong do? Why did she feel like she was being called? Lass, it's the black tortoise. The aura of the black tortoise." In his mind, old man Tsang, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke. Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. Black tortoise? A portion of the black tortoise's soul is nourished within your profound jade heart. This portion of the soul sensed the black tortoise's aura, which is why the profound jade heart reacted strangely. Old man Tsang explained. In other words, the other part of black tortoise's soul was currently in the direction of the back garden. As long as he could retrieve that part of the black tortoise's soul, he could completely awaken the black tortoise. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed slightly as her lips curled into a smile as she looked at Steward Yin. "Since Miao clan leader has invited me with great hospitality, I naturally have to make a trip over. Will Steward Yin please lead the way?" "Miss Yi." Butler Yin still wanted to persuade her. "It's fine. After being lazy for so many days, it's time to have some fun." Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a teasing cold arc. Her charming eyes were filled with a chilly intent that made one shudder. Butler Yin's body couldn't help but tremble as he immediately quivered. "Yes, I'll bring you over now." Based on Yi Luo's ability. Indeed, there was no need to fear Miao Yixiong. Chapter 2605. At the back garden. Yiqing Luo followed housekeeper Yin and had just reached the back garden when she saw Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong sitting in the pavilion. It was rare that Miao Rongrong didn't wear her Miao tribe's unique attire, but wore a dark-colored long dress. Her face was pale and gentle. A head of fine black hair was tied up in an extremely simple bun, with quite a lot of fine black hair hanging over her shoulders. She looked extremely delicate and pitiful. The minute she saw Yiqing Luo approaching, Miao Rongrong was the first to stand up, and like a gust of wind, she dashed towards Yiqing Luo as her eyes reddened and she knelt down in front of her tearfully. "Miss Yi? I know I was wrong yesterday. I shouldn't have admired the Overlord and shouldn't have any improper thoughts towards the Overlord. Please forgive me." Yiqing Luo? Who could tell her what kind of situation was this? Kneeling down at the slightest disagreement. Complaining tearfully at the slightest disagreement. A drama queen coming online? "Miss Yi, yesterday's matter is our fault for not considering thoroughly. I hope you don't mind." Miao Yixiong also walked over, apologizing sincerely. Miao Rongrong raised her head in an extremely strong manner, as her eyes sparkled with tears as she looked at Yiqing Luo timidly, displaying the essence of the white lotus to the extreme. "If Miss Yi is not willing to forgive me, then I will kneel here forever." Looking at the father and daughter pair, echoing each other, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh. She squinted her eyes as she looked at the person kneeling by her feet with a smile which didn't look like a smile. She really admired Miao Rongrong. According to her understanding, Miao Rongrong as the eldest young miss of the Miao tribe, and the future sacred maiden. She had always been arrogant and her heart was higher than the sky. It was impossible for her to be the weak white lotus. She had not expected. After meeting Dmo Xian, this arrogant and conceited eldest young Miss Miao could actually portray the white lotus so vividly. She was rather persistent. Miao Rongrong was so persistent. If she didn't give her some face, wouldn't it be inexcusable? Hence, Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile. After that, under Miao Rongrong's strong and stubborn gaze, she walked past Miao Rongrong and walked towards the pavilion. Then he heard her lazy voice. "Okay, then you can kneel." "Forgive?" Aha. She knew that Miao Yixiong had asked housekeeper Yin to invite her to the back garden for another purpose. It turned out that they wanted to use this trick to force her to say that she forgave them. The Miao tribe's holy maiden selection was imminent. Many people from other forces had also decided to stay in the Qinyu sect. In this back garden, there would be people from other factions passing by or strolling in groups, under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Chapter 2606. What kind of unspeakable relationship did the young mistress of the Miao tribe have with the overlord that Yi Luo caught? So, Miss Miao came to apologize to Yi Luo and beg for his forgiveness? This isn't right. During the birthday banquet, young Mistress Miao had personally performed a dance and taken the initiative to approach Dizun. However, she had been treated so coldly by Dizun. How could he have a private relationship with young Miss Miao? So, what was going on with this scene? The 5 or 6 representatives of the various forces immediately became interested. They were definitely not gossiping. Because this was gossip about the Overlord. It was extremely important. He wanted to figure out the relationship between the Overlord and Miss Miao. Only then did they know how to face the Miaogu family. That was what Miao Yixiong had in mind. No matter what the Overlord's attitude towards Miao Rongrong was. Anyway, it was enough to portray Miao Rongrong and Dizun as having an affair, an ambiguous relationship. After that, when Rongrong and Dizun appeared in front of everyone, it would not be so abrupt. Miao Yixiong hid the glint in his eyes and looked at Miao Rongrong, who was kneeling on the ground with an aggrieved expression. He coughed gently and a helpless look appeared on his face. He then turned to Stewardine and said, "Sorry to trouble you with today's matter, Stewardine. Both of us would like to plead with Miss Yi in private. Stewardine, if you have other matters to attend to, please go ahead." It was obvious that the guest was being asked to leave, so Butler Yin couldn't stay any longer. Looking at the surroundings of the garden, there were about a dozen people coming and going. Under the watchful eyes of the public, the father and daughter of the Miao family could not do anything out of line. Moreover, Miss Yi was not someone who would be bullied easily. With that thought in mind, Butler Yin retreated. In the pavilion, as well as the small path leading to the pavilion, there was only Yi Qing Luo and the Miao father and daughter trio left. "Miss Yi, other than begging for your forgiveness, I also want to talk to you about the antidote." At this moment, Miao Yixiong put away the guilt and helplessness from before and lowered his voice as he spoke in a deep voice. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. "You want the antidote and this is your attitude?" She glanced at Miao Rongrong, who was still kneeling on the path, and snorted. His smile was filled with mockery. Miao Rongrong was so infuriated that her face flushed red, almost unable to suppress the arrogance in her heart as she stood up to tear Yi Qing Luo apart. However, from the corner of her eyes, she glanced at the few people who were still watching from the opposite side of the pavilion and her eyes were filled with a layer of mist. "Miss Yi, during the birthday banquet, we've already tried our best to hide the fact that you've been poisoned. Please give me the antidote." The antidote which Miao Rongrong had taken from Yi Qing Luo's hands had long been consumed. And every time the poison flared up, she was in excruciating pain. She really didn't want to suffer this kind of pain again. "Conceal?" Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but laugh. "Do I need you to conceal? Besides, do you really want to hide it from me?" Miao Rongrong's eyes were filled with tears as she suddenly kowtowed to her. "Miss Yi, I really want to help you hide it. If you bear the name of a spy from another country, you will become a wanted criminal in the Nirvana realm." The pavilion and the strolling path on the opposite side were separated by a not-so-wide pond. The people from the other forces couldn't hear their conversation clearly. However, they could clearly see Miao Rongrong kowtowing to Yi Luo with a pitiful look. Chapter 2607. No matter what, everyone loved to sympathize with the weak. Especially when they saw Yi Qing Luo's arrogance. Miao Rongrong's pitiful look. The scales in their hearts naturally leaned towards Miao Rongrong's side. As men, they felt that it was normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Especially for an outstanding man like the Overlord. Even if he had a harem of 3,000 concubines, that was also a normal move. Even if Miao Rongrong really had an affair with the Overlord. Yi Qing Luo this was at most the Overlord's mistress. She had no right to accuse Miao Rongrong and stop Miao Rongrong from interacting with the Overlord. But although they were thinking this way in their hearts, but they had no intention of interfering. After all, for now, the Overlord still pampered Yi Qing Luo. They didn't need to offend the Overlord just because of a Miao Rongrong. Feeling the continuous gazes from the opposite side of the pavilion, Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into an extremely faint cold arc. She naturally knew. What was Miao Rongrong up to? The more ostentatious she was, the more pitiful Miao Rongrong was. But so what? So what if those people felt that Miao Rongrong was pitiful? Could they even come out to save the damsel in distress? She had said it before, she liked the look of others who were unhappy with her but didn't dare to do anything to her. "Miss Yi, I'm serious. As long as you give me the antidote, I guarantee. I will definitely prove for you that you are not a spy from another country." Miao Rongrong saw Yi Qing Luo's teasing smile and not saying a word, and immediately became anxious. Looking at Miao Rongrong's anxious look and the jealousy in her eyes, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but curled her pink lips as she laughed softly. Eldest Miss Miao, brains are a good thing, too bad you don't have it. Her devilish arrogance was reflected in Miao Rongrong's pupils. Miao Rongrong had some jealousy which couldn't be concealed, but more of it was fear and uneasiness towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo slowly stood up. Her fiery dress was pouring down. It was just a delicate face, but at this moment, it was sparkling with dazzling radiance. Miao Rongrong's pupils contracted uncontrollably. In her eyes, there was a shock that even she herself did not realize. Yiqing Luo casually shot a glance at her as she laughed softly. Eldest young Miss Miao, just based on my relationship with Xian, who would think that I'm a spy from another country? If I wanted to destroy the Miaogu clan and destroy the Northern Tide continent, why would I need to torment myself like this? Why would I be a spy? Miao Rongrong's face instantly turned pale. She quickly stood up and stumbled backwards, hitting the railing of the pavilion. Miao Rongrong, who on earth gave you the confidence to think that? At the same time that you want to seduce my man, I will still give you the antidote? Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a sneer, her eyes filled with contempt. Miao Rongrong tightly pursed her pale lips, her delicate body leaning against the railing, shivering. Looking at Yiqing Luo's arrogant ridicule, Miao Rongrong clenched her fists and looked down. Her messy black hair concealed the expression on her face. It also covered her facial features and gradually distorted them. Since that slut Yi Luo refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then there was no need for her to be soft-hearted. Originally she intended to give Yi Luo this chance. As long as Yi Luo was willing to give her the antidote, she would only treat Yi Luo gently by a little. Now, she would make Yi Luo kneel on the ground in a sorry state. Not only would she make Yi Luo obediently hand over the antidote, she would also destroy Yi Luo completely. Chapter 2608. She squinted her eyes, and even through Miao Rongrong's messy hair, she could tell that Miao Rongrong's eyes were filled with killing intent. She couldn't take it anymore. She wanted to stick her face forward and let her hit her. After hitting her, she felt that her pride had been trampled. Then why did she need to offer herself up for her to hit? Yiqing Luo sneered, since eldest Miss Miao doesn't intend to continue kneeling, I shall not accompany you. She came to the rear garden not only to watch the drama queen's performance. She had to search for the other part of Black Tortoise's soul. Where was it? In the rear garden. Yi Luo. Miao Rongrong saw that she was about to leave and immediately raised her head in a flustered manner, calling out her name. After calling out, she realized that it was inappropriate and lowered her head, calling out timidly, Miss Yi? Don't go. If you want me to kneel, I will kneel. Saying that, she was about to continue kneeling. Miao Yixiong pulled Miao Rongrong from behind as his expression sunk. Miss Yi, although you and the Overlord are in front, but you're not married to the Overlord, so why must you be so overbearing? He seemed to be suppressing his anger as he dragged Miao Rongrong away. Rongrong admires the Overlord, that's a matter between Rongrong and the Overlord. Since you're not married to the Overlord, then you have no right to stop the Overlord from interacting with other women. This kind of jealous woman is not fit to be the mistress of the Imperial Palace. Rongrong, let's go. Miao Yixiong roared with righteous indignation. However, Yiqing Luo's gaze went past Miao Yixiong and looked at the opposite side of the pond, at a flash of a figure. She frowned slightly. Why did she seem to see Miao Yi and Shen Gui? What were the two of them doing sneaking around? She wanted to take a closer look, but she could no longer see the two figures. Yiqing Luo's slender brows knitted even tighter. She was about to push Miao Yixiong away and rush to the opposite side to chase after Miao Yi and Shen Gui. But her arm was suddenly grabbed by someone. She heard Miao Rongrong crying. Yiqing Luo looked over impatiently. Miao Rongrong cried, Father? I won't go. I won't go. Following that, he tried his best to struggle away from Miao Yixiong's arm. His two hands clutched onto Yiqing Luo's wrist tightly. Miss Yi, please forgive me. Forgive me. Let go. Yiqing Luo spat out the words coldly. Her icy cold gaze swept past the hand that was wrapped around her arm. But this time Miao Rongrong did not look afraid. Her eyes were still brimming with tears, and she was crying so hard that she could not catch her breath. However, the words that came out of her mouth were filled with arrogance and a cold smile. Yi Luo, you will pay for your foolishness. Her words had just ended when she suddenly grabbed Yiqing Luo's wrist tightly as she screamed out, Ah! Then he leaned against the railing of the pavilion. She kept screaming, "Miss Yi, don't kill me. I don't dare to admire the overlord anymore, I don't dare to." Amidst the screams and cries, her body rolled over at the railing. His entire body flipped into the pool. From the opposite angle, they could only see Yi Qingluo pushing Miao Rongrong into the water. Help! Help! Miao Rongrong flopped a few times in the water and then sank into the water. Eldest young Miss Miao. The few people from the various powerhouses on the opposite side saw that a life was about to be lost, so they couldn't continue to watch the show. They all jumped into the pool and saved Miao Rongrong up to the shore. Miao Yixiong was so angry that his face was steely green, as he shouted angrily at Yi Qingluo, "Vicious woman! If anything happens to Rongrong, even if I have to risk the entire Miaogu family, I will take revenge for Rongrong." Chapter 2609. This turn of events made the people from the major forces who were watching the show feel ashamed. "Miss Yi, you really have no tolerance for others. Young Lady Miao has specially come to apologize to you. Even if you don't accept or forgive her, you can't do anything to her. Lady Miao is one of the candidates to be chosen as the sacred maiden of the Miao tribe. Aren't you disrespecting the century-old Miao tribe by killing her? Miss Yi, although it's wrong for eldest Lady Miao to admire the overlord, but if the overlord and eldest Lady Miao are in love, treating eldest Lady Miao in this way is a disgrace to a woman's character." Countless comments were on Miao Rongrong's side. From Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's occasionally loud conversation, they could roughly guess. It was highly possible that Miao Rongrong had an affair with the overlord and was caught by Yi Luo. Yi Luo dared not blame Di Zun, so he attacked Miao Rongrong. After all, Yi Luo's appearance couldn't compare to Miao Rongrong's at all. No wonder the overlord accepted Miao Rongrong's admiration. How could an old love compare to a new one? This group of opportunistic forces immediately prepared to protect the overlord's new sweetheart and stand up for her. He listened to the clamor of the crowd. Yi Qingluo's slender brows creased slightly as her gaze swept across everything on the opposite side to ascertain that Miao Yi and Shen Gue were no longer around. Only then did he turn his eyes back to the Miao family's father and daughter. Looking at the expressions of their drama queens, Yi Qingluo's lips suddenly curled into a contemptuous sneer. Miao Rongrong was actually playing such a cheap trick in front of her. Miao Rongrong wanted to lead everyone to believe that she, Miao Rongrong, and Diamo Xian had an intimate relationship. Then she would lead everyone to believe that she, Yi Luo, was a woman who was easily jealous, and was not fit to stand beside Diamo Xian. Unfortunately, Miao Rongrong's wishful thinking was wrong. Her soul did not grow up in this era. He didn't think it was normal to have multiple wives. Jealousy? She, Yi Qingluo, was easily jealous. The devilish smile on Yi Qingluo's lips grew brighter and brighter. Her eyes, which were as bright as stars, revealed a devilish smile as she looked at the people who were criticizing her, as well as the Miao family's father and daughter, who were glaring at her with hatred. Word by word she said decisively, "Shut your dog mouths." These cold words seemed to be mixed with ice, causing those people to instinctively close their mouths. When they came to their senses, their faces immediately turned ashen. They were actually intimidated by a yellow-haired little girl. Miao Rongrong, who was lying in Miao Yixiong's arms and dripping wet, immediately cried a few times. Her frail body trembled uncontrollably and it was hard to tell whether it was the water or tears on her face. "Miss Yi, why did you push me into the water? I just want to ask for your forgiveness. Why do you have to do this to me? I'm happy, I'm willing." Yi Qingluo laughed mischievously. "Even if I kill you, what can you do?" She didn't bother to deny it. Under Miao Rongrong's pitiful disguise, her denial was merely a denial. No one would believe her. You're actually so vicious." Miao Rongrong was extremely satisfied with Yi Qingluo's reply. In her eyes she almost couldn't suppress the joy, especially when her gaze saw that figure who was flying over swiftly behind Yi Qingluo. Chapter 2610. The Emotion? Yi Qingluo was slightly stunned. She remembered that early this morning, Tang Beiyuan anxiously asked him to leave, saying that there was an urgent matter which required him to settle personally. Diamo Xian then left. Why was he back so soon? Was he done with his business? Yi Qingluo's stunned expression in Miao Rongrong's eyes became panic. Under Miao Rongrong's wet eyelashes, her eyes sparkled with a sinister sneer. As long as the Overlord knew that the woman whom he fancied was using his power to be arrogant and despotic, and had a vicious heart, the Overlord would definitely see the good in her. Hence, Miao Rongrong put in even more effort to perform. Overlord. Rongrong only wanted to apologize to Miss Yi for sending the pastries yesterday, but. She was choking with sobs as she complained. But she saw a tall figure dressed in a flowing purple robe, as though he had gathered all the light, walking quickly towards them. The next moment Yiqing Luo felt a warmth on her back. The familiar sandalwood scent seeped into her nose. The man's arm had already encircled her slender waist. Yiqing Luo very naturally placed her hand on the back of the man's hand, slightly glancing sideways, her eyes filled with gentleness. "Have you settled the matter?" Dmo Xian whispered softly beside her ear. The two of them naturally hugged each other with a look of deep affection. This made those who were originally helping Miao Rongrong to accuse Yiqing Luo shut their mouths. At this moment, Miao Rongrong's sobs were all stuck in her throat, not knowing whether to continue crying or not. Could it be that she was crying so pitifully that Di Zun didn't even notice her existence? This point the crowd also realized. They looked at the drenched Miao Rongrong wrapped in Miao Yixiong's brocade robe, and their gazes changed. Didn't this pair of father and daughter say Miao Rongrong and the Overlord had an affair? No matter how they looked at it, the Overlord didn't seem to put Miao Rongrong in his eyes at all. Miao Yixiong's face was steely green, staring at Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo's gentle talk. He secretly gritted his teeth and raised his voice. "Overlord, even though Lady Yi is your woman, her heart is so vicious and jealous. She's not fit to stand by your side." Miao Yixiong's voice made Dmo Xian have a slight reaction. He lifted his eyelids and glanced at Miao Yixiong with his deep peach blossom eyes. This gaze sent a chill down Miao Yixiong's spine. But when he thought of his plan, he held Miao Rongrong tightly in his arms, so tightly that Miao Rongrong burst into tears. "Miss Yi dared to kill me in front of so many people and pushed me into the water. In private, doesn't she want to kill all the women who tried to get close to His Majesty?" Miao Rongrong burst into tears. Miao Yixiong looked distressed and his face was filled with anger. "Sir Overlord, the Miao tribe must demand an explanation from Lady Yi." This commotion naturally attracted many guests from the Qinyu sect. In total there were at least 30 people. Housekeeper Yin was originally worried that the Miao father and daughter pair would do something to Yiqing Luo, so he had been paying attention to this side. When the matter was blown up, he immediately sent someone out to inform Yin Qinghao and Yin Yanxiu who were outside. Whereas at the pavilion, Dmo Xian listened to Miao Yixiong's indignant words. He held Yiqing Luo's waist and slowly walked towards the pavilion's railing. The place where they were standing was a level higher than the opposite. Chapter 26:11. The nobleman's lips were obviously hooked into a smile, but no one could feel the slightest bit of warmth. Under his gaze, everyone felt as if they were in an ice cellar. It was so cold that they couldn't move. Those who came to watch the show wanted to escape, but they discovered that because of their nervousness, their bodies were stiff and unable to move. Moreover, the moment they moved, in this eerie and silent atmosphere, would definitely be the center of attention. Hence, everyone stood stiffly on the spot, watching Dmo Xian's expression carefully. Even the sound of their breathing subconsciously became extremely light. Under this strange atmosphere, Dmo Xian slightly narrowed his peach blossom eyes, reflecting an extremely cold ray of light. His thin lips moved slightly as he spat out each word coldly. "Explanation? I wonder what explanation Leader Miao wants?" Under this majestic aura, Miao Yixiong was so frightened that he couldn't utter a word for a long time. His entire face was almost pale. The gaze he used to look at Dmo Xian was also filled with fear. Dmo Xian's smile deepened, the coldness in his eyes deepened. "Since Leader Miao hasn't thought of what explanation you want then, this lord will decide for you." Soon after, his voice that was filled with a demonic charm resounded in everyone's ears. "Why don't we destroy the Miaogu family? Is this explanation satisfactory to Leader Miao?" Obviously he was just using the most ordinary tone to say it. But everyone felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts to the top of their heads. Everyone couldn't help but shiver a little. One after another they shrank their necks. Especially those few forces who previously stood by the Miao father and daughter's side. It was as if they were fleeing, distancing themselves from the Miao father and daughter, for fear of being involved with them. "Destroy the Miaogu family. The Miao family, which had almost 1,000 years of history. When Di Zun said that he wanted to destroy them, his tone was so light and casual. But they absolutely believed it. As long as the Overlord wanted it. Not to mention the Miao family. Even the North Wave continent would not be a problem. This Miao family's leader was actually so foolish to want the Overlord to give an explanation. Now, not to mention an explanation. Whether his Miao clan could survive or not was now a problem. Miao Yixiong's cold sweat instantly soaked through his clothes. His hand, which was holding Miao Rongrong, trembled for a moment. Di Zun, this is not a joke. Di Zun really wanted to destroy the Miao family? That bitch. What kind of drug did the Overlord eat to make the Overlord fall head over heels for her? Miao Yixiong tried his best to restrain the fear in his heart. With a pale face, he said in a trembling voice, Your Majesty, it was Miss Yi who pushed Rongrong. Aren't you afraid that the world will laugh at you for protecting her like this, Your Majesty, for becoming a fatuous ruler because of a woman? His words made Di Xian raise his brows slightly. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes met Miao Yixiong's face with a faint smile. The smile at the corner of his mouth was very cold. My woman, I love to spoil her uncontrollably. *CK. Another critical dog food. The atmosphere was still so strange and horrifying. However, the onlookers did not know why. After the Overlord said this, their hearts were boiling. These tons of dog food had made them deeply aware of what was going on, Yi Luo's position in the Overlord's heart. No one could replace him. Chapter 26:12. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms as she leaned into Di Xian's arms, squinting her eyes slightly. Towards the Miao father and daughter pair's low-level tricks. She really couldn't muster up any interest. But Miao Yixiong was right about one thing. Di Xian's actions really sounded like a muddle-headed and tyrannical ruler just to win a beauty's smile. She was Di Xian's woman. Which also represented Di Xian's foresight and taste. No matter how Di Xian protected her, she could not embarrass Di Xian. Her slender brows rose slightly as she patted the hand on her waist lightly. There was no need for any words. Their tacit understanding made Di Xian directly let go of her hand. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles as she comforted the man behind her. Following that, she patted the pavilion's railing and flipped herself up. A ball of fiery figure instantly landed on the opposite side of the pavilion, in front of Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong was suddenly approached by the young lady as he staggered a few steps back. Yiqing Luo didn't even take a look at Miao Yixiong as she smiled sweetly at Miao Rongrong. Eldest Miss Miao thinks that I pushed you? The wet pond water dripped onto the ground. Miao Rongrong shivered as she leaned into Miao Yixiong's arms. Her face was filled with fear and terror. This wasn't an act. It was Miao Rongrong's real emotions. She had not expected the Overlord to have such deep feelings for this slut. Totally not minding the infamy to destroy the Miao family. If her and her father's plan failed, the Miao family would really cease to exist. She absolutely could not let the Miao family be destroyed. She was the Miao tribe's sacred lady. The future sacred lady of the Miao tribe. She still had to ascend to the upper realm through the position of sacred lady. She still had a beautiful future. This plan could only succeed and absolutely could not fail. Miao Rongrong pursed her lips as she replied in a trembling voice, Sorry Miss Yi, I've misunderstood. Oh? Yiqing Luo's lips curled. Didn't you swear earlier that I pushed you and wanted to kill you? Why did you misunderstand again? Miao Rongrong lowered her head even more. I was wrong. Miss Yi, please forgive me. Yiqing Luo smiled evilly, and it's good that you know you're in the wrong, but there's no need to talk about forgiveness because from the beginning till the end, I've only treated you as a joke. Yes, I'm a joke. So Miss Yi, I beg you. Let me go. Let the Miao clan go. Miao Rongrong choked with sobs and couldn't speak. Her entire body was trembling from fear. Miao Rongrong's plea. On the contrary, it made Yiqing Luo appear even more arrogant and despotic. Especially those who came later when they saw this scene. No matter what, she felt that Yiqing Luo was forcing Miao Rongrong to admit that Miao Rongrong falling into the water had nothing to do with her. Yiqing Luo naturally guessed everyone's thoughts. She rubbed her hands disapprovingly as she tilted her head and gave an innocent smile. Eldest young Miss Miao, I only wanted to tell you one thing. Towards those scums who tried to seduce my man and frame me, If I want to take action, I will absolutely not use such a low IQ action to humiliate myself. Her words paused as she asked smilingly, make a guess, what will I do? Miao Rongrong naturally knew that Yi Qing Luo's question was definitely not something good. But before Miao Rongrong had the chance to reply, she felt her collar being yanked by someone fiercely. Miao Yixiong's coat which she was wearing slid onto the ground. Chapter 26:13. Ah. Miao Rongrong realized that her current situation was no different from not wearing any clothes at all. Especially the water droplets that were still dripping from her body. Instead, there was a different kind of temptation. There were already quite a number of men who stared at her body with malicious intentions. Their gazes were like fire, as though they had seen through those few layers of wet clothes, seeing through everything about her. She screamed and tried to cover herself. But before she could even raise her hand, bam! A slap landed on Miao Rongrong's face. This slap was full of strength. After a while, Miao Rongrong's face was already red and swollen. This slap also made Miao Rongrong dazed, even forgetting to cover herself up. The surrounding gasps of cold air made Miao Rongrong regain some of her rationality. Before she could open her mouth, Miao Rongrong felt a sharp pain coming from her chest. She was kicked by someone. His entire body was sent flying by a powerful impact. Miao Rongrong fell into the pool with a plop sound, splashing countless of water. Miao Rongrong was choked by the water and struggled to get out of the water. But after being tugged by Yi Qing Luo, her forelimbs had no strength at all. Gulp gulp. She wanted to ask for help, but was only poured into big mouthfuls of water. Miao Rongrong could almost feel that her consciousness was gradually drifting away. Rongrong. Miao Yixiong's eyes widened as he rushed to the side of the pool, looking at his daughter who had stopped struggling in the water. His face was ashen. Looking around, those few who had saved Miao Rongrong once had no intention of going into the water to save her. He clenched his teeth and jumped into the water himself, carrying Miao Rongrong to the shore. Just as they were about to go ashore, a light voice was heard from the other end of the pavilion. Since Miao Yixiong and eldest young Miss Miao love to move around underwater, I shall satisfy the both of you, father and daughter, to soak in the water for 4 hours. Miao Yixiong's action of going ashore paused. Miao Rongrong, who was leaning on his shoulder, was so shocked that she spat out a mouthful of water. Looking at the two people in the water, Yi Qing Luo's face didn't have a single trace of warmth, and her charming eyes were so cold that it felt icy cold. If it was me, I would do this, do you know? She dusted off her hands, then pulled out a handkerchief to wipe her hands. Then she threw the handkerchief at Miao Yixiong's face. With a leap, she returned back into Diamo Xian's arms. She leaned on Diamo Xian, her long and narrow eyes flashed with a biting cold glint. Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong, don't play with this kind of imbecile plaything in front of me, otherwise, the next time, Ah Xian's words will become reality. She sneered as she pulled Diamo Xian's hand and turned to leave. Ah Xian, let's go back to the courtyard. Just standing here, I feel that we're especially degrading. Diamo Xian nodded slightly as he walked side by side with Yi Qing Luo and left the back garden. When Yin Qinghao hurried over, Diamo Xian and Yi Qing Luo had long left. The two people soaking in the water had ashen complexions and were trembling non-stop. The surrounding people were standing by the side of the pool, pointing and gossiping, as though they were ridiculing something. Yin Qinghao immediately walked over and called for this person to go down and fish out the Miao father and daughter duo. The person by the shore immediately stopped him. Sect Master Yin, the overlord had personally instructed to let this father and daughter duo soak in the water for 4 hours before they can come out. Yin Qinghao was stunned as he took a look at the two people in the pool. Miao Yixiong had to carry Miao Rongrong, who was already weak and powerless, and to stabilize his body in the water, so his face had long turned pale. Hearing the explanation from the person by the shore, his expression was getting darker and darker. Chapter 26:14. 4 hours. Yin Qinghao muttered softly as he raised his eyes and looked at Miao Yixiong. Since it's the overlord's instructions, then I'll have to trouble Miao Clan's clan leader. Miao Yixiong was so angry that he gritted his teeth as his eyes turned scarlet red. The pond water soaked his entire body, making him look extremely disheveled and unbearable. His heart was filled with anger. But he maintained a helpless expression as he shot a gentle glance at Miao Rongrong, who was leaning on his shoulder. It's Rongrong who made Miss Yi unhappy, and Miss Yi wants to punish Rongrong, so it's what Rongrong deserves. He didn't mention a single word about Diamo, but he attributed the reason why they were reduced to this state, soaking in the pond, to Yiqing Luo. Those who were watching earlier were filled with disdain. Although they didn't know Yi Luo well. But from the birthday banquet they could tell. This lady's character would absolutely disdain to do such a thing like pushing someone into the water secretly. If she wanted to do it, it would be like what she did earlier, directly kicking him into the pond. Thinking of Miao Rongrong's sweet crying look when she saw Diamo, anyone with brains knew clearly. This was obviously Miao Rongrong who intentionally fell into the water to frame Yi Luo. They had even fallen into the Miao father and daughter duo's trap. And even helped the father and daughter duo to speak up. And almost offended the overlord. Miao Yixiong was still trying to push everything onto Yi Luo? But there were some who heard the commotion and rushed over. Upon hearing Miao Yixiong's words, they followed his lead and misunderstood Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo held onto Diamo arm as they walked back to the courtyard. The design of Elation Sec's back garden was extremely elegant. The trees on both sides of the path were lush and lush. Not too far away was a flower bed which had been meticulously trimmed by the gardener, and every part was extremely pleasing to the eye. I wasn't around. Why did you run over to meet the father and daughter duo alone? Diamo glanced sideways and his peach blossom eyes were deeply fixated on the young lady beside him, his brows filled with gentleness. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled into a sweet smile as she raised her head and rested her chin on his arm. When you were in the upper realm, do you still remember the memory of the doppelganger who was by my side? I remember. Diamo chuckled lightly. Mo Yao's pupils reflected the young lady's disguised face. Clearly, it was a far cry from her gorgeous face. But as long as it was her. Even he was amazed. He would have the urge to hug the girl tightly and carry her into the room. How could Yiqing Luo not see through the man's naked gaze? She rolled her eyes and raised her hand to cover his eyes, which were filled with emotion. The main reason I came to the back garden was because I felt the summoning of the other part of the black tortoise's soul. Black tortoise. Diamo murmured. Yiqing Luo could feel the eyes under her palm, the man's overly long eyelashes sweeping past her palm. Following that, Diamo raised his hand and gently held the young lady's little hand. You can't sense it now? Yiqing Luo shook her head. The black tortoise's presence has disappeared. After arriving at the back garden, the intense reaction within the profound jade heart had already gradually dissipated. Especially when Miao Rongrong was about to fall into the water to frame her. All the senses had completely disappeared. Otherwise she would have pulled Diamo along to accompany her to search for the other part of the black tortoise's soul. Chapter 26:15. Yiqing Luo nodded. Confirm the location, Black Tortoise's soul will definitely be collected. If I'm not around, even if you sense Black Tortoise's soul, don't be alone with the Miao father and daughter. Diamo hand followed her head and landed on her bare face. His slender fingers curled up slightly, pinching the flesh on her cheek, although the Miao family is nothing to be afraid of, but it is after all a place that has been around for nearly 1,000 years, and mainly uses venomous spells. You don't know much about venomous spells, so it's best to be careful. I know. Yiqing Luo didn't want to be outdone as she tiptoed and pinched his face. These father and daughter have been jumping in front of me for the past 2 days, I can roughly guess their motive. Good that you know, don't make me worry. Diamo peach blossom eyes were filled with gentleness as he gently embraced her petite body, his thin lips imprinted on her hair. Feeling the man's deep concern and pampering, Yiqing Luo's smile became sweeter as her arms circled around his neck, pulling him closer to her. Following that, her pink lips landed a light kiss on his chin. After today's commotion, they won't have the energy to find trouble with us for the next few days, don't worry. Yiqing Luo smiled. Just as Diamo was being teased by this kiss of hers, he wanted to turn this light kiss into a passionate kiss. Yiqing Luo had already moved away like a butterfly. She quickly jogged forward, and even turned her head back, revealing a crafty smile at him. Showing the delicateness that a girl should have. Diamo stood behind, looking at his empty arm. Then looking at the young lady who was smiling like a flower. A pair of bold peach blossom eyes, filled with pampering. That cold and hard face of peerless elegance also added a bit of gentleness. His lips carried a joyful smile, his eyes were focused as if in his heart, there was only her and only her. There were people passing by one after another. When they saw this scene, a surge of envy and yearning arose in their hearts. Seeing the overlord, they were extremely excited. But such a beautiful atmosphere they couldn't bear to disturb, nor did they dare to disturb. Another 3 days went by. These 3 days the Miao father and daughter indeed had no energy to find trouble with Yiqing Luo. Perhaps it was because of Diamo Xian. It was about the future garden. No one mentioned it again. No one intentionally mentioned the Miao father and daughter duo in front of Yiqing Luo. Apart from the various forces that would occasionally come to their courtyard in an attempt to establish a relationship with them, it was rather peaceful. And on this 4th day, before the sky had even turned bright, a clamor was heard outside Yiqing Luo and the others' courtyard. Yiqing Luo woke up from Diamo Xian's arms and yawned tiredly. With his keen senses, he could hear Butler Yin's deliberately lowered voice from outside the courtyard. He seemed to be arguing with someone. Diamo Xian's large palm covered her eyes. "You must be exhausted last night. Sleep a little more, I'll go out to take a look." "I'm fine," it seems to be housekeeper Yin's voice. Something might have happened. Yiqing Luo propped up her weak limbs and flipped her messy hair. Her waist suddenly tightened and the man's hoarse voice, which was sober in the middle of the night, rang in her ears. "Are you all right? Does that mean I didn't work hard enough last night?" Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red as her little hands pushed away his chest. "Stop being so frivolous. Quickly put on your clothes and go out to take a look." Men's clothes were easy to wear. Especially Diamo Xian. His arms stretched out. His legs got off the bed. Chapter 26:16. I'll go take a look. Diamo Xian scooped up the young lady and planted a kiss on her lips before he turned and walked out of the room. After Yiqing Luo was dressed, she followed the voice and walked out of the courtyard. She heard a man's voice filled with anger. "Overlord, although my Miaogu family doesn't close your palace, but we are after all a 1,000-year-old family. You don't differentiate between right and wrong, using the annihilation of the Miaogu family to threaten me. I'm not convinced." This voice, it wasn't unfamiliar. When Yiqing Luo heard this, she knew that this man was the son of the second master of the Miaogu family, Miao Jingwei, who had blocked the attack for Xia Lingling at the Peach Blossom restaurant. It was probably not even 4 in the morning. He came to her courtyard at this hour, just to create a ruckus over Miao Rongrong's matter? Young Master Miao. Housekeeper Yin was shocked by Miao Jingwei's bold words and immediately raised his voice to remind Miao Jingwei. However, Miao Jingwei didn't have any intention to retreat. "Rongrong's life is in danger no matter what. I hope Miss Yi can make a trip to see Rongrong at least. Whatever she did to Rongrong, she must resolve it." Around them there were also a few people discussing in low voices. Apparently they were attracted by Miao Jingwei's actions. It was not even morning yet. The spacious Joy sect seemed extremely empty and desolate. Miao Jingwei's sonorous and unyielding voice fell. Only those onlookers who were attracted by the commotion could be heard. Just as this strange atmosphere that sent chills down one's spine was about to suffocate the crowd, she then heard the noble and elegant man's thin lips spit out a sentence indifferently. "So what if you don't accept it? Whether the Miaogu family exists or not, it doesn't matter to me." "Overlord." Miao Jingwei's eyes turned red from Diamo Xian's words. He had already knelt here. And had already clashed with Diamo Xian. If this matter wasn't settled properly, he would die sooner or later. He clenched his fists tightly and suppressed his fear towards Diamo Xian as he lowered his head, not daring to look at Diamo Xian. Obviously Diamo Xian didn't look much older than him. But unfortunately Diamo Xian just stood there. It was an oppressive feeling. It was so heavy that even breathing became extremely difficult for him. Scram. Spitting out those cold words, Diamo Xian couldn't even be bothered to look at him as he turned around to return to the courtyard. Butler Yin immediately bent down to pull Miao Jingwei away. But Miao Jingwei didn't know where the courage came from as he suddenly dashed towards Diamo Xian, wanting to hug Diamo Xian's leg. "Overlord. I beg you to let Miss Yi see Rongrong. Only Miss Yi can save Rongrong. I beg you." But he had yet to get close to Diamo Xian. A whirlwind suddenly blew in front of him. Miao Jingwei felt as if his body had been pushed by some kind of power, and he was sent flying backwards. He fell heavily to the ground and rolled on the ground in pain. The Overlord hates it when people get close to him. "Young Master Miao, please leave with me." Butler Yin frowned and tried to persuade him. Miao Jingwei screamed in pain. His screams were extremely loud in the wee hours of the morning. Yiqing Luo had just walked to the courtyard entrance when she saw this scene. Looking at Miao Jingwei, who was rolling on the ground like a madman and throwing a tantrum, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. This Miao family's people were really unscrupulous, throwing a tantrum and using shameless methods. Chapter 26:17. The first thing he saw was a young lady dressed in a fiery red long robe as she walked over slowly. Perhaps she had just woken up and hadn't had the time to tidy herself up. The young lady's long black hair was scattered over her shoulders. The early morning breeze was slightly chilly and carried a trace of moisture as it blew her hair behind her back. The fiery red dress was fluttering in the wind like a fluttering flame, bobbing up and down. Under the two lanterns hanging above the courtyard door, the young lady's beautiful face was filled with an inexplicable charm. Miao Jingwei stared at the young lady as she walked over, and for a moment, he even forgot about rolling on the ground. Suddenly Miao Jingwei shuddered. An inexplicable chill which made one's scalp go numb surged into his heart. His eyes flashed as he looked towards Diamo Xian. He saw that originally noble, aloof and disdainful man was looking at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. That gaze was absolutely his lifetime's nightmare. Was because he stared at Yi Luo. So, the overlord was jealous? How much did he pamper and love Yi Luo? So he didn't even allow another man to look at Yi Luo? Miao Jingwei's heart suddenly surged with an uneasy premonition. Second young master Miao. Yiqing Luo's clear and melodious voice had an intentional teasing tone. Since when did second young master Miao become a trickster, especially running over to my courtyard to roll on the ground? She raised her head and looked at Diamo Xian. Ah Xian, do you think I should tip second young master Miao some money? The young lady had just opened her mouth. Diamo Xian had already stretched out his hand. Yiqing Luo unpretentiously placed her hand into Diamo Xian's hand. The next moment she was dragged into Diamo Xian's arms. The man's warm embrace instantly eroded the coolness on her body. She raised her head and placed her chin on the man's chest, revealing a sweet smile. My money is your money. If you want a tip, it's up to you. Diamo Xian's voice was gentle, as though the person who was emitting a chill earlier wasn't him. Miao Jingwei regained his senses from the shock. Hearing their conversation, he suddenly felt a burst of embarrassment. Those who were watching the show couldn't help but burst out laughing. Miao Jingwei's actions just now were indeed like those street performers who perform tricks. Miss Yi, you finally come. Miao Jingwei tried his best to ignore those ridiculing gazes, and according to his own plan, he knelt down in front of Yiqing Luo. As long as their plan succeeded, the humiliation he had suffered today would disappear from this world forever. Everyone who had seen what had happened tonight would disappear. This thought made Miao Jingwei even more determined as he knelt down and moved towards Yiqing Luo's feet. Miss Yi, I beg you, go and save Rongrong. She is our Miao tribe's future sacred maiden, our future hope. She cannot die. She cannot die. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she smirked. Miao Rongrong is going to die. He sounded as if Miao Rongrong's death was nothing out of the ordinary. Miao Jingwei clenched his fists tightly as he kowtowed on the ground. 3 days ago Rongrong had offended Miss Yi and was punished by Miss Yi to soak in the pond for 4 hours. Rongrong's body, originally because of Miss Yi, is extremely weak, and after soaking in the pond for 4 hours, she can't take it. Can't take it. One by one the heavy kowtowing sounds were extremely loud. Not long later the ground had turned red. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she had no intention to stop him. Chapter 26:18. Then why did he continue to kowtow? Yiqing Luo put on a curious look as she asked. Miao Jingwei almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Following that, he heard Yiqing Luo clicking her tongue as she continued, surely he wouldn't want to kowtow to his death in front of us, then let us be the scapegoat, right? Miao Jingwei coughed hard. The blood oozing out of his forehead made him dizzy. His body swayed and fell to the ground with a thud. Missy, please save Rongrong, only you can save her. After saying this, Miao Jingwei could no longer stand the dizziness in his head and completely fainted. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she stared at Miao Jingwei's deathly pale face, as her brows creased slightly. We really have to take the blame this time. Diamo Xian tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. If I kill him, no one would dare to say a word, but Miao Rongrong, do you want him dead? Yiqing Luo's motive for coming to Northern Tide Continent was to let the Miao-gu family's people suppress Long Yunzhan's venom. If Miao Rongrong died, could it be that he had to bring Miao Yixiong to the West Continent? As for the candidate to suppress the parasite poison for Zhan, I have a better choice. Yiqing Luo mysteriously hooked her lips, but, for now, before we are certain Miao Rongrong cannot die for the time being, then I'll accompany you over. Dmo Xian didn't probe further as he respected Yiqing Luo's choice. Yiqing Luo shot a glance at Miao Jingwei as her charming eyes flashed past a dark and gloomy glint. I'm afraid it's a trap. Miao Jingwei came to her courtyard and made such a big fuss. He definitely had ulterior motives. Was Miao Rongrong's life really in danger, or was it just an excuse to lure her over? This point needed to be verified. I'm here. Dmo Xian gently rubbed her head, his thin lips curving into a shallow arc. The smile on Yiqing Luo's face grew thicker and warmer. With Xian around, even if there was a trap, it would be easily solved. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian arrived at the courtyard where the Miao-gu family and the others were staying. This courtyard, as compared to Yiqing Luo and the others' courtyard, had an obvious difference. When he stepped into the courtyard, he did not hear any signs of life. Yiqing Luo released her perception, and other than the master bedroom, there was no one else in the entire courtyard. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. There's no trap? Dmo Xian's large palm covered her head, his gaze slightly sunk. In terms of profound strength, Miao Yixiong is not as good as you. Arranging an assassin is not realistic. So? Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes in realization. What are their specialties? Dmo Xian followed up. Dodo. Yiqing Luo laughed. I wonder if Miao Rongrong will still be able to poison us when the poison acts up. The two of them went straight to Miao Rongrong's room. Miao Yixiong's hoarse voice could be heard as he approached. Rongrong? My hopes are all on you, you must not die. If you die, the Miao tribe will be finished. What responded to him was a barely audible cough. Didn't Yi Luo say that she needs you to help her get rid of the curse? She won't let you die. Hang in there, Jingwei will bring Yi Luo here soon. You won't die. You are the future holy maiden of the Miao tribe. Miao Yixiong was still muttering something in a low voice, as though he hadn't noticed that someone was approaching from behind. Suddenly, Miao Rongrong, who was lying on the bed, started to twitch violently. Following that extremely pale face became twisted and sinister. Her body also started to bend. Chapter 26:19. This was the symptom of the poison acting up. Miao Yixiong's face was filled with anxiety as he held Miao Rongrong's hand. Because of the intense pain all over his body, as if thousands of sharp blades were cutting his body viciously. It was the high fever that caused him to lose consciousness. Miao Rongrong used all her strength to hold on tightly to Miao Yixiong's hand. Miao Yixiong's face twitched. He didn't struggle as he allowed Miao Rongrong to hold his hand. His voice was taut as he endured the pain as he spoke. Rongrong, hold on, the guards will bring Miss Yi over soon and the antidote will be here soon. Bear with it. In the depths of his drooping eyelids, there was a sinister look. But Miao Rongrong couldn't hear his voice. Because of the pain, her twitching body was stiff like a devil, extremely terrifying. Miao Yixiong couldn't stand the pain as he used all his strength to struggle free from Miao Rongrong's hand and turned around. I'll go take a look at the guards now, Rongrong, you. When he turned around and saw the two people behind him, his expression changed abruptly. His eyes widened as he went wild with joy. Overlord. Miss Yi, you're here? He seemed to be excited as his entire body was trembling as his eyes stared straight at the two people in front of him, unable to suppress his excitement and joy. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Miao Yixiong's performance was too exaggerated. So exaggerated that she started to suspect Miao Yixiong. Or perhaps, if Miao Yixiong was really as concerned about Miao Rongrong as he had shown, his first reaction when he saw them should be to beg her to cure Miao Rongrong, instead of standing here looking at them in ecstasy, as though he had completely forgotten that his heartache daughter was still suffering. Dmo Xian slightly tightened his grip on Yiqing Luo as his gaze went past Miao Yixiong and landed on Miao Rongrong. Miao Yixiong finally reacted as he rushed towards Yiqing Luo. Miss Yi, please save Rongrong her antidote. Her antidote has already been taken. Please give her the antidote. He was just about to pounce forward. But before he could get within 3 steps of Yiqing Luo, A purple light flashed past his eyes. A powerful profound energy blocked his footsteps. Diamo Xian's purple robe fluttered in the wind as he stared coldly at Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong felt a chill run down his spine and did not dare to take another step forward. Miao Rongrong is not dead yet. Yiqing Luo smiled as she looked at the person on the bed who was in so much pain that his face was contorted. Why did Leader Miao think that I would give her the antidote? Her words had just ended when Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Rongrong's eyes, as it flashed slightly. Her little hand unknowingly tugged at Diamo Xian's robe at his waist. He lowered his eyes. She looked up. Their eyes met, transmitting a message. If he wasn't mistaken, just now, when she was teasing Miao Rongrong about not dying, Miao Rongrong's curled-up fingers suddenly seemed to gain strength as she tightly clenched them into fists. Diamo Xian nodded his head slightly. At this moment, Miao Yixiong suddenly knelt in front of the two of them, his face full of guilt and pleading. He looked very much like a father who would disregard his pride and dignity for the sake of his daughter. Miss Yi, don't you need Rongrong to do something for you? As long as you're willing to save her, as long as she's alive. I promise you as the Miao clan leader to let Rongrong help you. To the best of my ability. Chapter 26-20. Yiqing Luo's smile gradually deepened as her long and narrow charming eyes were seductive. I've given her a chance, but she insisted on choosing this path. To make herself suffer. I'm so kind-hearted, so naturally I'll help her pursue the path of suffering. With that, she raised her hand and rubbed her chin. She smiled in admiration. Now, she should have found the pain she was pursuing. Missy, Rongrong knows she's wrong. She shouldn't have acted on her own and shouldn't have disobeyed you. I promise, she won't go against Miss Yi again. Miao Yixiong humbled himself and pleaded sincerely. The person on the bed screamed in pain at the right time. His voice was as hoarse as a sawtooth, and he could only let out an extremely faint scream. It was as if he had shouted himself hoarse and exhausted all his strength. Miao Yixiong's heart ached even more as he pleaded for mercy. However, the two audience members were not very interested in his performance. Yiqing Luo only stared at Miao Rongrong, looking at Miao Rongrong's painful and distorted moans, her face which was flushed red from the high fever, as her heart was in a dilemma. Should he save him or not? Although Yiqing Luo wasn't sure if Miao Rongrong's poison had really acted up. However, this high fever was real. In addition, Miao Rongrong had taken the antidote from her. According to the time, Miao Rongrong had indeed finished it. If he didn't save them, even if it was a fake poison relapse, Miao Rongrong would also die tomorrow. Her intuition told her that she could choose to believe the person she guessed. But, before she had concrete evidence to confirm her intuition, she did not dare to use Long Yunzhan's life as a wager. If he followed his intuition and allowed Miao Rongrong to die, and her intuition was wrong. Among the people of the Miaogu clan, who else could help Long Yunzhan suppress the Gu poison? Miao Yixiong? He was afraid that this Miao Yixiong would be harder to control than Miao Rongrong. Just as she was thinking, she felt an itch on her waist. She raised her eyes in resentment and glared at Diamo Xian. Diamo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as his shimmering peach blossom eyes blinked devilishly at her. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up. That's right. They could first see what the father and daughter were up to. Then he would seize the opportunity to ruin all of their plans. When all hope was lost. If the Miao father and daughter wanted to survive, they could only obediently follow her wishes. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes and looked at Miao Yixiong, who was still kneeling on the ground, pleading for mercy for Miao Rongrong. Her crafty eyes flashed a cold arc. Miao Yixiong, how can I believe your words? After all, Miao Rongrong lied to me once. Naturally, there will be a second time, a third time. I can swear on the most venomous curse of the Miao Miao tribe. Miao Yixiong saw Yiqing Luo showing signs of loosening up and immediately replied agitatedly. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Then, I will cure Miao Rongrong of the poison. Before Miao Rongrong's task is completed, she can only be used by me. You don't have any objections, right? No. Miao Yixiong was very decisive. Yiqing Luo nodded her head in satisfaction, and immediately walked towards Miao Rongrong. She didn't miss it. The moment she lifted her foot, Miao Yixiong's eyes were filled with uncontrollable excitement and hostility. The corners of her lips curled up, but she didn't seem to mind. With Ah Xian by her side, She could leave her back to Xian without reservation. She believed in Xian's ability. Her feet stopped by Miao Rongrong's bedside. Chapter 26-21. Her fingers were about a fist's distance away from Miao Rongrong. Behind her, she felt the change and fluctuation of the airflow. She didn't turn back. Instead, her lips curled into an evil smile with a hint of ridicule. Swoosh! There was an extremely faint sound of something slicing through the air. Following that was Miao Yixiong's painful groan. She frowned slightly. She did not sense the sense of danger that was surging towards her back as she had imagined. Just as she was about to turn back, her ears twitched. That hand which was about to touch Miao Rongrong suddenly shook and a red feather fan suddenly opened up in her palm. Clang clang, the sound of weapons clashing was extremely crisp. The glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands coincidentally blocked a sharp dagger. She raised her eyes slightly and met Miao Rongrong's eyes, which were filled with shock and disbelief. Yiqing Luo's gaze was like a torch as she stared straight into Miao Rongrong's eyes. Her long and narrow eyes overflowed with a meaningful smile. But Miao Rongrong could clearly see that the curve of the young girl's lips was suffused with a chilling coldness that made one shudder. You? She opened her mouth in disbelief. She couldn't believe that Yi Luo could still maintain such a sharp reaction when facing a dying person. She also couldn't believe that her foolproof plan was seen through by Yiqing Luo. Surprised? Yiqing Luo smiled lightly, her voice was calm and her face was still elegant. But the more it was like this, the more it made Miao Rongrong's heart felt as though it was being strangled by something, as though it was about to be torn into pieces. It made one horrified and terrified. Yiqing Luo continued to smile as her 5 fingers moved. The red feather fan in her hand rotated in her palm. Miao Rongrong felt a sharp pain coming from the hand which was holding the dagger. The dagger in her hand fell onto her bed. At the same time, Yiqing Luo closed the glower flame fan and with a flip, a sharp blade slid out from the fan handle. The cold and sharp blade gleamed with a cold glint as it stuck to Miao Rongrong's neck. Following that, Yiqing Luo glanced sideways and looked behind her. As expected, Miao Yixiong was sprawled on the ground in a sorry state, spitting out blood. As for Diamo Xian, he stood elegantly by the side, his deep inky eyes gazed deeply at her. She glanced sideways. The cold lines on the man's face softened. The corners of his lips curled upwards, his eyes filled with adoration. The two of you, knew from the beginning, knew. Miao Yixiong coughed as he staggered to his feet, blood dripping from his mouth. Yes, we know. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as her brows revealed an elegant smile. Cooperating with you is merely to see what kind of high-level tricks you can come up with. She paused for a moment, and then her smile turned into a sneer. But I'm very disappointed. Your techniques are too weak. Miao Yixiong's face was ashen and filled with ruthlessness. There was no trace of the kindness he had before. It was hideous, twisted, and extremely terrifying. Yiqing Luo looked down at Miao Rongrong with a pale face. She couldn't believe that the outcome had completely gone against her plan. She moved the glower flame fan in her hands. The sharp blade left a small mark on Miao Rongrong's neck. Blood gushed out. Miao Rongrong was so shocked that her body shrank, her eyes widened in horror, but she didn't dare to open her mouth or shout out a word. What does Miao Yixiong want to do? Yiqing Luo looked at Diamo Xian, and then looked at Miao Yixiong, who was standing unsteadily, somewhat curious about their plans. Chapter 26-22. It was indeed a parasite. Yiqing Luo sneered, "You have the guts to use a parasite on you." She raised her brows as she stared at Miao Yixiong, her gaze scanning his body. Where's his parasite? Diamo Xian's gaze turned cold as he shook his head. In his mind he recalled the earlier scene, just as Yiqing Luo bent over to check on Miao Rongrong's condition. His gaze had been on Yiqing Luo. It was at this moment. Miao Yixiong quietly moved behind him. Miao Yixiong's movements were extremely gentle. But the moment he moved, it caused the air to fluctuate. He had already sensed it. And because of this, before Miao Yixiong could get close, he was subdued by him. He clearly saw Miao Yixiong swiftly retracting his hand. That flash of black wooden box, a fingernail-sized parasite, came into view. But after Miao Yixiong was subdued, he used his perception to scan Miao Yixiong. He didn't sense any signs of the parasite. Couldn't find any signs of the parasite? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as her gaze scanned Miao Yixiong from top to bottom. Indeed, she didn't sense any other living being's presence. But since Diamo Xian saw Miao Yixiong holding the parasite and wanted to use it on him, then Miao Yixiong must have hidden the parasite on him. But what method did Miao Yixiong use to hide the presence of the parasite in front of Diamo Xian and her? When Yiqing Luo and Diamo Xian's gaze fell onto Miao Yixiong's face was filled with gloomy clouds as his brows were overflowing with viciousness. He tensed up as his gaze fell onto Miao Rongrong, who was trembling in fear on the bed as he gritted his teeth. Trash. If it wasn't for Miao Rongrong, this plan, no matter how vigilant the Overlord and Yi Luo were, they would definitely succeed. It was all because of Miao Rongrong, that trash. Under such circumstances, she still couldn't subdue Yi Luo. Because of the Overlord's pampering towards Yi Luo. As long as she subdued Yi Luo, she would be able to make the Overlord surrender. Wait a minute. Miao Yixiong's ruthless eyes flashed with a trace of chilliness. His eyes were covered with a thin layer of coldness. Under the evil aura, it wasn't obvious at all. Miao Rongrong, who was reprimanded by Miao Yixiong, suddenly felt that she had been wronged. She's a cripple, you're also a cripple, the both of you are just about the same. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up into a smile. Miao Yixiong's face was ashen as he stared at Yiqing Luo. The resentment in his eyes was extremely obvious. Yiqing Luo ignored his gaze as she continued to smile. Leader Miao, I gave you a second chance but you refused to accept it, so don't blame me and Xian. Opportunity? Miao Yixiong was so angry that the wounds all over his body were hurting as if they were being torn apart. He sneered, you are giving me a chance, giving the Miaogu clan a chance? You clearly knew that I and that trash were plotting against you. Come and laugh at us. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she exclaimed in surprise, yet Chief Miao has actually become smart. Miao Yixiong was so angry that the muscles on his face were trembling, the blood in his chest was about to gush out from his mouth. His eyes were gloomy as he clenched his fists tightly, suppressing the urge to vomit blood. Kill me or dismember me as you wish. I want to see if our Miaogu clan, which has existed for hundreds of years, can be destroyed just because you say so. Yiqing Luo was slightly surprised. She couldn't help but took a few glances at Miao Yixiong. Chapter 26-23. According to what she thought would happen next, Miao Yixiong knew that he had no chance to fight back. Weren't they supposed to kneel and beg for mercy in order to survive? That was more like Miao Yixiong's personality. Could it be, what other tricks did he have? Oh right, in Miao Yixiong's hands, there was still that goo worm which even Diamo Xian was unable to detect. He still had not given up on the idea of poisoning Diamo Xian? Yiqing Luo thought of this point. Diamo Xian naturally thought of this as well. He did not care about the goo poison. If he wanted Miao Yixiong's life, he could have taken his life before Miao Yixiong took out the poison. He was only standing here to accompany his little Luo heir. Whether it was Miao Yixiong or Miao Rongrong, all of them had the potential to help Long Yunzhan suppress the poison. Miao Yixiong had to stay alive. The unknown poison was still in Miao Yixiong's body, and it was too dangerous. Xian, find out where the venom in his body is. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Rongrong, who was beside her. It was probably because Yiqing Luo's attention had been placed on Miao Yixiong which led to her trembling hands. The sharp blade on the handle of the fan left several marks on Miao Rongrong's neck. Drops of blood dripped down. Miao Rongrong had already fallen into a coma. He looked at the sharp blade that was stained with blood. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she rubbed the sharp blade on Miao Rongrong's body, until the blood on the blade was wiped clean. She took out a handful of medicinal powder from the profound phoenix ring and sprinkled it on the sharp blade. This was the cleaning powder that Yiqing Luo was researching on. While she was disinfecting the sharp blade, she turned her head and walked towards Diamo Xian. Animals are very sensitive to goo worms, I'll let Chi come out and look for it. Be careful of the parasite. Diamo Xian stretched out his hand and grabbed the young lady's wrist, pulling her to his side. His tall and sturdy body completely blocked Yiqing Luo in front of her, obstructing the distance between Yiqing Luo and Miao Yixiong. Yiqing Luo kept the glower flame fan and called out Chi to sniff the scent of the goo worm. When he saw Chi-Chi's petite little kitten appear, he felt a chill run down his spine. Miao Yixiong's pupils contracted. He took a few steps back, his eyes filled with vigilance. Ayo. Chi-Chi seemed to have sensed something and suddenly let out a low growl. You found something? Yiqing Luo understood the meaning of Chi-Chi's cry. She walked over and bent down to hug Chi-Chi. Just as she was about to turn around and pull Diamo Xian along with Chi-Chi's reminder, to find the hidden goo worm on Miao Yixiong. When she turned around, her eyes suddenly widened when she saw the figure behind her. Her expression changed abruptly and her little hand immediately grabbed onto Diamo Xian's arm. "Ah Xian, be careful." Her other hand swiftly raised up and a majestic wave of air rose from her palm. With a force that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas, it struck towards Diamo Xian's back. Damn Miao Rongrong. He actually pretended to be unconscious to deceive her. He actually wanted to sneak an attack on Diamo Xian while all their attention was on Miao Yixiong. She sure has guts. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with a cold, murderous intent which was extremely cold. But, after her palm struck out, Yiqing Tong's expression changed. Miao Rongrong had no intention of dodging. Instead, he met her palm strike head-on and rushed towards Diamo Xian. Miao Rongrong's eyes and face were filled with madness and distortion. She didn't want to live anymore. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly as she pulled Diamo Xian's arm and was about to rush in front of him to block Miao Rongrong's attack. However, the man didn't move an inch. He held the young lady's slender waist tightly as his deep and chilly peach blossom eyes seemed to be engulfed with thick black billowing waves. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.